Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's not quite as picturesque as the last place we did one of these shows, but I mean, there's a picture on the wall behind us, so that's something. It's not bad.
It's not bad. We are still in Los Angeles. This is our last bit of time here in LA. In fact, we will be on our way to the airport in,
12
12-ish
hours.
hours, which is it's a little sad, but I think, Tom, I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to speak for me. I'm about ready to be home.
The novelty of Southern California always wears off on me right about the second time you're sitting in traffic, and it's like 1:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. It's the week between Christmas and New Year's, and why are we doing this?
Mhm.
Why is this happening?
But it has been a good trip. Obviously, the excitement of the Rose Bowl, the game itself. Is that the greatest game you've ever covered? I did not cover any of the playoff games in 2014. The 2020 Clemson game, playoff game, was unfortunately didn't have the fans like this one did. It wasn't as exciting. It didn't come down to the final minute. This Michigan 2016. There's some other games in there, but I don't think anything was as crazy as this one, as just sheer entertainment. Like, I don't know if this one can be topped.
Yeah, just thinking back, I was writing for the Ozone in 2003, so I wasn't in the press box, but I covered the 2003 triple overtime North Carolina State game. That's the only one that really jumped out as like, well, we can have a conversation there. There have been other games that have been dramatic, that have had crazy finishes. 2017 Penn State was, that's probably in the conversation just because of the crazy fourth quarter comeback. There aren't that many. I mean, Ohio State doesn't play that many close games. And when Ohio State used to play lots of close games under Jim Tressel, there were a lot of 13-7 games and 14-9 games. Like the 2002 Michigan game was incredibly dramatic, but it ended up 14-9, which is like, well, that wasn't, that reminded me a lot of the 1997 Rose Bowl. I was out here for that one. And like, yeah, that game was incredibly dramatic. The game was also 14-10, 55 minutes in, which is like, the last 5 minutes can make up for a lot. But if you have the dramatic last 5 minutes, but also the first 55 minutes are just pretty much just an enormous banger, like, yeah, that's way better than 14-10 after 55 minutes.
Yeah, Holy Buckeye might be one of the greatest moments in Ohio State history. It is not one of the best games in Ohio State history. That's one where you need to fast forward on that one. So, it's just an amazing experience. And it's always fun to watch just the reaction of the players afterwards, just the sheer joy. More so, and with coaches, it's the relief, but with players, it's just pure happiness. So, what have we done on this trip, Tom? We did 4 episodes of Scoop Eats. The first one just media.
Yeah, just basically showing people around the media room,
and that was pretty good. Honestly, it was some good Tex-Mex Mexican food. Then we went to, was it El Cholo?
Yes.
That was real.
That was fantastic.
Yes. And then we went to Philippe's. Although we always call it Philippe's, it just says Philippe. So
this may be one of these Mandela effect things where it's like everyone's like, it's the Berenstain Bears. Well, it's actually the Berenstain Bears.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think almost certainly that's what we're talking about here. It's not that we just misread the sign. It's that it's definitely the Mandela effect.
And then we went today, we did In-N-Out over by the airport. And so you can catch any of those episodes on YouTube. Just go to the Buckeye Scoop channel. And shoot, there's been so many videos that we have posted this week. So you can either just search Scoop Eats, or you can just scroll and see all of the stuff. I posted a video of on the field after the game last night, which is always an interesting view, just sights and sounds type of thing that you never know what's in those. It's kind of like magnet fishing, which I don't, all due respect to those of you who magnet fish, I don't know what you're looking for.
I don't even know what that is.
Really? People get fish for junk on the bottom of like riverbeds and ponds with like powerful magnets.
So it's kind of like a metal detector on the beach, but you're doing it underneath the water, more or less.
And there's no metal detecting. It's just, I mean, the magnet will detect it and then pick it up. Like, you don't know what it's going to be license plates. It's going to be, I'm trying to bring up this shopping cart. You don't know. And then you pull it up. What did I get? Later, when we're done with this in 5 or 6 hours, I don't even know if it's called magnet fishing, but that's what it is. So check that out.
There's a video game screen that I've seen that people will just use to reply to things on Twitter, and it just says, "You caught a garbage." That sounds pretty much like what magnet fishing is. I think I've got the context now.
Mm-hmm. And so that's been a good time. It's good catching up with everybody here on the beat, and just it's interesting to be away from everybody and just be able to do work. But it does get, like I said, you eventually want to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will be home tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that. Tom, are you looking forward to being home?
I am. I'm getting off the airplane, driving home, and immediately coaching a hockey practice because it's like, welcome back.
Yeah, I'll be getting home, and probably the thing is, am I going to get anything written today after this for tomorrow? Probably not. So I'll have to go home and write something so that I can have done something on the day.
We're going to be on an airplane for like 5 hours. I think you can make that happen.
I'm probably going to need some sleep. So I know we've got some questions coming in. Please send those in. We are going to rely on you guys for a lot of this show. We have some stuff to talk about. The Buckeyes got a couple of commits over the last couple of days. Tom, if you want your commitment to go under the radar, you should commit during a bowl game. Now, I seem to recall Sean Wade doing that. He did it at like halftime of the Alabama game.
Did he? I remember Kareem Walker committing during the national championship game in 2014. I remember that.
But Cedric Hawkins, a safety out of Cocoa High School in Florida, committed the number 20 safety in the nation, has offers from all of the Florida schools. However, Tom, Ohio State has not had the best luck at Cocoa High School. There was Bruce Judson, who committed as a true freshman. He as part of the 2017 class, and he may have been another one of those national championship game area commitments. And then, of course, Jamel Dean, which also did not go well. Third time, perhaps the charm, 2023 Florida kid commits this far out. We'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, Bill Green has theories on Florida players and how Florida players are different than other players in other parts of the countries, and how if they commit, that means like you're probably in their top 3, which is good. And again, 2023, we're still a little ways away. We're not even done with the 2022 class. So, and he was someone who was very much under the radar. I think I was talking to someone on the field at the game yesterday, and they said he wasn't even listed as having an Ohio State offer in the 247 database, and it had just kind of like flown under the radar that he had this offer because he had, I guess, visited last summer at some point. So, yeah, that was very much a what do you think? It's like I'm going to listen to Mark and Bill and Alex talk for a while, and then I will tell you what I think.
Because Kevin sent out a group text with the commitment, and I'm like, who? And I try to pay attention to recruiting. I didn't know.
We've also been a little busy the last couple of weeks, which is I will know a lot more about a lot of recruits in about 2 weeks. Once we're kind of in the winding down the football season mode.
Now the Buckeyes also got to commit on Sunday. Amari Abor, 4-star defensive end, borderline 5-star, who I'm definitely familiar with, committed at the Under Armour All-American game, the number 4 edge rusher, edge player in the nation, number 38 overall. Tom, we watched his commitment live, and then I think the next question was, so who else are you going to visit? And he had a list of places he was going to visit.
Yeah, that was another boy. In a just hashtag Cruton sense, I think I would rate that one about a solid 9.5 out of 10. That I'm committed, 100% committed. Going to be taking visits to Miami and somewhere else in the next couple of weeks. Which, again, like this is congratulations. You're at least in his top 3. You might even be the leader right now, but it's not. There's a difference between a commitment where you're done, and the commitment where it's like, well, I got to put on a hat on TV. That was exciting. Do you think he'll wear the Ohio State hat on the Miami visit?
Probably not. In fact, I bet he will wear Miami gear on the Miami visit. But that's okay because when he's visiting Florida, he won't be wearing Miami gear.
Okay, that's good. That would be a little awkward.
Yes.
Yeah. So if they get him and they keep him, great. That would be. I mean, you look at the rest of this defensive line class. You got Caden Curry, you've got Kenyatta Jackson, you've got probably Hero Kanu. We'll find out for sure when he does his hat dance in San Antonio. It sounds like that's going to go well for Ohio State. And if you have Amari Abor too, if you add those 4 guys, that's a real good class, and that is potentially 4 guys you could play all the way across the just in those 4 positions on the line. You could potentially play those 4 guys all together at the same time. That is a tremendous class. There are spots on this team where the class is incredible. There's spots on the team where this class is that would, if you get and keep all 4 of those guys through signing day, that would be a really good class.
Yeah. Do we have some questions we want to get to? Are you watching this, Tom?
We do. All? I'm watching. I mean, we can talk. Question about Jim Knowles. He was supposed to get introduced today. What happened? I don't think anything happened. I think it was basically January 2nd was the day he will take over. I don't think they were planning a press conference today because, here's the thing. The logistics of January 2nd are the team got back. They got on a plane last night after the game. So they were probably at the airport flying out at 9 last night. So they functionally had a red eye. So they probably got home at 5 or 6 this morning. I can assure you that Ryan Day and the sports information staff were probably not super keen on hustling back to the WAC to have a press conference at noon. That probably is not what the first order of business for them. And, also all the people who were covering that, well, guess what? They're all in LA and some of them went home today. Others went somewhere else today. Kevin Noon is about to hop on a plane to go to the All-American game in San Antonio. So you've got people kind of going in a bunch of different directions right now. I was not expecting a Tuesday press conference. That's just, okay, it's your first day in the office, and he's going to start. I would assume we'll hear. I'm trying to think back in the past. We might not get him until they have all the other potential openings filled. So that might be, I feel like we January 20th, January 30th kind of, and sometimes it might even be National Signing Day is the first time we actually talk to.
Right. I'm thinking, I think it's been National Signing Day in the past, perhaps even spring, but I was trying to think when, because there have been times where it's not been immediate. I don't know if that was pandemic related, but it wouldn't surprise me if they wait until everything is settled because Matt Barnes is off to Memphis to be the defensive coordinator. Now they have the 10 assistant spots filled, but I don't think we expect that to be where things stand the rest of the week, the rest of the month. So does Ryan Day, rather than have Jim Knowles answer a bunch of questions or be asked a bunch of questions he can't answer in terms of the rest of the staff, you just wait until it's all settled and then you do it. And whether that's signing day, because a lot of times what the reasoning will be is coaches are out recruiting.
Right.
We can't really schedule them for you. They're not even here right now. They're in Florida, they're in California, they're in Pocatello, Idaho, which has been actually a place where they have been. So I would think Ohio State will probably, they don't have any release to send out because they've already sent that out. But yeah, it was just the start date was January 2nd, not the introduction date. And really, I would prefer maybe more time, obviously, to pass before we talk to Knowles, because I would like for him to be at Ohio State for a little while before we talk to him, so he has more knowledge of what's going on. Because when you have a quarterback competition in the spring and we get the quarterbacks the first day,
that was literally the exact example I was about to give. Yep.
And so when you ask about it, well, Tom,
we haven't even.
Don't have pads.
Yeah.
We're just throwing against air right now. It's way too early. Sorry, ask us again in a month. And it's like, but we will not talk to you again until next April.
Yes.
Next March.
Yeah. Coincidentally, we always get the quarterbacks first. That's, among history's most staggering coincidences, I would say, personally.
Reverse alphabetical, Tom.
There you go. Well, wouldn't that make the wide receivers first?
Receivers.
Mm.
Still.
Finally, a flaw in your theory, which your
Catchers.
otherwise perfect theory. There you go. Which I guess tight ends are just ends. I don't know. Brandon says that game was insane. I had no interest in watching it, but I'm glad I did. And I mean, let's go back to the end of the regular season. Like, everyone was extremely upset and, ready to throw the TV remote against the wall and declare the empire is dead and everything is terrible and everything is burning. And I mean, the Rose Bowl is still the Rose Bowl, and everyone can say the Rose Bowl doesn't mean anything. And then you turn on the TV and it's the Rose Bowl. And it's like, oh, it's the Rose Bowl. I love this thing. This is this wonderful, beloved American tradition. And if you're in the Rose Bowl, you must be a good team, because they don't generally let, you don't see a lot of Rutgers and Oregon State in the Rose Bowl. So that gives the game a little bit of a veneer of importance. And for the players, like, you can say as much as you want that you're down and upset after the Michigan loss, but when you get there, you don't want to get blown out. Like, you want to play. And once those competitive juices start flowing a little bit, it turns into a game. And that was a game from the get-go. That was a hard-hitting game. That was a very dramatic game. And I think we learned a lot about the Ohio State football program on the whole, just the way they kind of answered the bell after that slow start, because it would have been very, very easy to kind of fold the tents. And, you even at halftime, you're down 14 points. And the first drive of the third quarter, it was very similar to the Michigan game in some ways, where they're down. It's like, well, but they're going to get the ball after the half. And certainly they'll go right down the field and score a touchdown. And they went right down the field and threw the ball in the end zone, and it got intercepted. It was like, oh, well, now Utah's going to go right down the field. Now they're going to be three touchdowns, and then they're really going to be in trouble. And that's when they're going to quit. And boy, they're going to this is going to be a bad second half. And then they got a stop, and they got a turnover, and they scored a touchdown, and then they got another stop, and it was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was that, but that took some chutzpah to respond that way.
I think we learned, beyond a shadow of a doubt, throwing an interception, driving down the field and throwing an interception in the end zone is better than going 3-0. Like, for the psyche, there was you saw that obviously we can move the ball on these guys, so it's okay. We'll just do it again. Don't throw an interception, obviously, but you have confidence that we went right down, and we can do that again, and especially if you start getting some stops. We've talked about some of this in last night's instant reaction show, but the Michigan game, then coming into this game, caged over with one of the great quotes that I really liked. He said, if you don't have a bad day, you don't know what a good day looks like. And you could tell the Buckeyes had a bad day against Michigan, and they appreciated what this game meant and what it felt like afterwards, because they were the smiles were just everywhere, and they had been through some bad times, and this took them out of it. And it was the work that they put in. They got rewarded for it, and that gets back to the testimony versus theory. This is something that they can carry with them through the course of the off season, and know that Michigan game doesn't have to be their identity. It's just something that happened, and you go from there. Yeah,
and that's I think I said this last night that this season is no longer defined solely by that Michigan game. This is now a Rose Bowl champion team that played in this incredibly dramatic Rose Bowl that, 10 years from now, when they're showing the montage of the greatest Rose Bowl games ever, you're going to see Vince Young, and you're going to see that Georgia Oklahoma game, and you're going to see that USC Penn State game, and you're going to see this one. And that's pretty good company. This is a game that people, there are Rose Bowls in the past. It's like, there's some of the recent Wisconsin Rose Bowls. Like, I know they've lost like 4 in a row, but they've all been kind of all like smushed together in your brain. It's just like, was this the one where they could run the ball but couldn't throw it and lost, 20 something to 17, or was that the other one where exactly the same thing happened? Like, there are a bunch of years where it's just like, wow, it's a majestic, scenic thing. Every once in a while, you'll have a weird team there. It's like, wow, that was the year that Iowa was there and got crushed, and that it'll stand out for that reason. But this is one that you're going to remember for a long, long time.
Yeah, and I even wrote that on Sunday today about the Kate Stover quote, and I also wrote, like, don't lose sight of the happiness that you had after this game. Like, that means something. Don't let that go and just be like, oh yeah, but this was the year we lost to Michigan, and so there was nothing good came from it, because that's not true. You all watched that game last night. Those of you who were brave enough and strong enough to do so, you watched it. You had a good time. That was part of the season as well.
Yeah, we don't have Kevin here today, so now I have to stay on top of the super chats. So I will do my absolute best. Yakov says CJ made multiple NFL throws / absolute dimes. Yup.
Tom, I had this in the show rundown that I jotted down. Is CJ Stroud the best Ohio State quarterback of all time now? Because he made throws that Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields have made. He made throws that anybody that you talk about with the NFL throws. Utah, I think Kyle Whittingham, defensive coordinator, also at Utah, compared him to Justin Herbert, and he's lighting up the NFL right now. So I'm not going to tell you that Justin Fields is better. And he's number one for me.
I think we can have that conversation. I think that the numbers, it's not just the numbers. It's like the numbers that Haskins was putting up, which is partly caused by some of the same. This was a very 2018 team in a lot of ways. They didn't run the ball particularly well at times. They didn't play good defense, so they're giving up a lot of points. So they constantly had to score. They couldn't just sit on leads. So this was, in some ways, a similar team to that 2018. So you 2018 team. So you got those big point numbers and their yards numbers and touchdown numbers that Dwayne Haskins had. But he's making, like, I don't know if his arm's as strong as Dwayne Haskins, but he's much more accurate than Dwayne Haskins. And he can make the throws that you don't see. There was the one to Jackson Smith-Njigba in the top left end zone. It was towards the end of the game, and he dropped it in, and there was a replay. Someone pointed this on Twitter today. There's a replay after the touchdown. They show a shot of Ryan Day, and he throws his arms in the air, and he goes, "What? He made the catch. He made the we'll say freaking catch."
Yeah.
And it was like, even Ryan Day's like, "Holy pants, that was a heck of a throw and a catch." And there was the one to Emeka Egbuka on the left sideline. That was when they really needed a perfect throw. And he came off of his first receiver, saw Emeka Egbuka, and just dropped it in the one spot where Emeka Egbuka could catch it, drag 1 foot, it'd stay in bounds, but above, it was relatively tight coverage, made the throw. It was very, that was very impressive. I'm not 100% ready to crown him the greatest. I feel like there's a lot of recency bias with that, and it's like, you can't possibly crown 17 different NFL players the GOAT this week. It's like, that's not how it works. It's not like the greatest of the last 5 minutes. So I'm a little hesitant to just throw that out there right now, but you can very legitimately have the conversation. And he has only thrown passes in one season in his whole life. So that's probably a pretty good start.
It's an incredible start. And you just, so many clutch throws. Mm-hmm. This was not Akron he's playing against. The stakes, the momentum was not with you, and didn't care. Mm-hmm. And sure, it helps having Jackson Smith-Njigba, but he also did this with 2 true freshmen, Julian Fleming, Mitch Rossi, and Jeremy Rucker. Like, I don't think it really matters who he has, even though he still has one of the most talented receiving rooms ever. It's like he's just so accurate, and he's so calm, and he had great protection all game long. So it all worked very well together. Yeah, I just, do you think, Tom, I know you're not ready now, but does it feel like an inevitability? Now, what Kevin Wilson said is he just needs to remain humble, and then, as long as that happens, but he's always been a humble guy. The one year we've talked to him, he's very soft-spoken, sometimes to his detriment for the fan base. But he's not like the legends of Troy Smith in 2006. There's one where I think prior to the bowl build-up, the rumor was, you have to address me as Mr. Heisman. That's just fake stuff. Sure, I'm sure, but like if you hear stuff like that about C.J. Stroud, it would seem very, very out of place.
Yeah, no, that I don't think that you have seen both players and teams kind of blow up for self-imposed reasons in the past at Ohio State. The 2015 team, I think, got complacent after the national championship. The 2022 team is going to have unfinished business. The Rose Bowl was great. Everyone enjoyed the heck out of the Rose Bowl. They're coming to the offseason feeling a lot better about everything. But on their list of goals for this season, I don't know if there are any of them that were actually checked off. They didn't beat Michigan. They didn't win the Big Ten. They didn't win. They tied for the division. So, cool. They didn't go to the college football playoff. They didn't win the national championship. Like, going to the Rose Bowl is great. And that was a super fun game, and everyone was very happy that they won it. But that wasn't one of the goals. So there is a real unfinished business vibe, I think, going into next season. So I don't think you're going to see guys get complacent. I think they now have seen a taste, like, okay, this is what it can be if we put in the work. Now we got to put in the work.
Yeah, and you can have different kinds of motivation based on a win or a loss. They lost to Clemson in 2019, and that motivated them. But is it better to win the Rose Bowl or lose in the playoffs? And that's something you probably ask Michigan fans. Would you rather end the way Ohio State did or end the way regardless of how that Ohio State-Michigan game ended up? Like, yes, this is the first time you went to the playoffs, so you wanted to do it. But moving forward, would you rather lose like that or win your final bowl game in a prestigious New Year's Six type bowl?
Yeah, and I wonder if there's – I guess they would both rather go to the playoff, I guess. Certainly Michigan would, I think, rather go to the playoff just because it's the first time they've done it. So now they can, you can hang that Final Four banner or whatever. Those sometimes get taken down. But moving forward, I guess you'd rather win, but winning, going to the playoff means you've probably beaten your rival. You've won the Big Ten, like all the other stuff. I think Ohio State would rather have Michigan season, even with it being this way. But, I'm sure that Michigan fans are not necessarily feeling super fantastic right now. I want to get to the super chat from Dave Valensky. Minnesota fan here. I think the Big Ten did very well in bowl games, but what is it going to take for this conference to start competing with the SEC? I guess the question is, what do you mean by that? Because, and I will do the 100% confessional here. I saw 0.0 seconds of the Citrus Bowl and the Outback Bowl because we were obviously working at the Rose Bowl. So I have no context to those other than Penn State had a bunch of guys opt out and lost by some decent amount, and Iowa knew it, but I didn't get a lot of specifics beyond that. So, but what does compete with the SEC mean? Michigan was non-competitive with an SEC team, but they were non-competitive with Georgia. The rest of the SEC has been fairly unremarkable in bowl games this year. I think a Big Ten is probably going to finish with a better bowl record than the SEC, and everyone has now decided, well, don't count, so therefore it's like, well, Georgia and Alabama are really good. And then there's a bunch of teams in the SEC that are like, it's fine.
That's what it means, competing with them.
Right.
It's not when you competing with the SEC means competing with Georgia and Alabama.
Well, then in that case, the answer is you have to send Ohio State to the playoff every year because no one else in the Big Ten has the talent to compete with Georgia or Alabama. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Michigan needs to step up. Penn State needs to step up. Like, your best programs historically need to
excuse me.
Michigan State. But like your greatest, benchmarks, tent poles, whatever else you want to use, they need to be better. They need, if they're going to be two of the four best or whatever, they need to act like it. And they're going to be competing against Georgia, Alabama, whoever. Like, what's the next SEC team? Is it
Texas A&M? Maybe. Yeah. It's just there's lots of teams that everyone wants to tell you is the next one, and then they go 8-4. Mm-hmm. But that's only because the SEC is so tough, Tony.
Yes,
you just don't understand that.
They stay in the top 10 for the first two losses,
right? And in order to do that, in order to compete with those two, with those two teams, there are really, what other teams would you put in that level of the sport? Because I don't think I would put Oklahoma in that level of the sport until they actually win a college football playoff game. So I think it's really Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, who obviously didn't have a Clemson year and has many more questions moving forward than Ohio State does.
Still won 10 or 11 games.
Yeah, I think finished 10-3 this year. But it's really Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, or Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and probably Clemson, and that's the list.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get into that tier of the sport, you have to start having recruiting classes. You have to have not just 1 year of good recruiting classes. You have to start stacking recruiting classes where you're the team that's getting 6 top 100 guys, sometimes 6 5-star guys. Ohio State has had a bunch of years where they've had like 10 top 100 guys. Maybe there was a year where they had 12 top 100 guys. Like you look at Michigan's classes and it's like, oh, they got 5-star JJ McCarthy and 5-star Donovan Edwards, and then they have one other guy in the top 100. Like, that's cool. Like, that's good. That will get you to a certain point. That will potentially get you to, if things break right, you could win the Big Ten. That's like about the ceiling that Michigan State hit under Mark D'Antonio, and they were doing it a little differently. They weren't recruiting that well, in terms of high ranked talent, but you can only get so far with that. And that's, you see Notre Dame bumping into that ceiling. You see Oklahoma bumping into that ceiling. You see a lot of those teams where it's like, oh, this team again, we have to watch them get killed in the first round of the playoffs. Like Cincinnati is a heck of a football program. They played at the absolute best game of their lives, and they did it against a not as good as usual Alabama team that didn't play particularly well, and they lost by 14, 17, something like that. I mean, it's just, they played great. They kept that game competitive. That was a very respectable effort. They should feel very proud, but there was no way on God's green earth that Cincinnati was going to win 2 games against Alabama and Georgia back to back. And there was no way on God's green earth that Michigan was going to win 2 games against Georgia and Alabama back to back. Ohio State could potentially do that. Clemson, if they have a good quarterback and they have that level of talent, they can do it. We have seen both of those things happen, but there's a long way to go. And you need a second, if a second team in the Big Ten steps up to that level at some point in recruiting, then we can have that conversation. But yeah, you have to be careful about when you say SEC, what do you mean when you say SEC?
Yes, because again, the SEC bowl record was not great this year. And
Correct.
It was Georgia and Alabama that carried them.
Stephen Piper says, I realize this is another super chat, by the way. Thank you, Stephen. I realize there are a lot of moving parts still, but as of right now, who do you see as OSU's biggest threat in the Big Ten next year and why? And there are a lot of moving pieces there. I'll tell you what, I'll talk about Michigan and you can think about Penn State while I'm talking.
I thought about it. Sean Clifford is back, so.
Okay.
But the game is in Beaver Stadium. Go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Michigan, I wonder how Michigan fans are feeling right now, because you're coming off the win over Ohio State. You're flying high. The world is your oyster. You're about to run off a 10-year run of dominance, and then you just get absolutely curb stomped by Georgia. And you look at Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and all the players who are doing stuff for Ohio State in the Rose Bowl are all coming back. And all the players who were the key pieces of your team this year, most of them are not coming back. You're losing Hassan Haskins, who was the running back who basically led you to victory in the Ohio State game. You're losing, I think, 3 offensive linemen. They're losing a decent chunk of their offensive line. They're, Ronnie Bell is presumably back, which will be good. That will be a big help for them moving forward. They got to get the quarterback situation figured out, because I don't think you're going to have those 2 guys coexisting peacefully moving forward. So I suspect it will be a JJ McCarthy team next year, and Cade McNamara will go find work somewhere else. But that is purely speculation on my part. You're losing Aiden Hutchinson. You're losing probably David Ajabo. I mean, those guys both should go pro. Dax Hill's draft eligible, or she?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, Dax Hill's draft eligible. You're losing a lot of the difference makers off your team, and I don't know that they have, they do not have people in the defensive end room who can just step in for Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo the way that Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, and Marvin Harrison stepped in the Rose Bowl for Ohio State when Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson opted out. I think I think this is going to be looked back on as a season where a lot of stuff went exactly right for Michigan. They had talent that they don't normally have, that a higher level of talent than they normally do. And once that talent leaves, there's going to be a step back. So I don't know that that's a team that I think is going to, be second place in the Big Ten East next year.
Well, and you have Michigan traveling to Ohio Stadium, which is going to be significant for just those two teams. So, Penn State has been recruiting all right, but you still expect James Franklin to screw it up somewhere and cost Penn State a game or two. The biggest threat in the Big Ten for Ohio State is still, to me, it's Ohio State. Because if they weren't as soft as they were on the line of scrimmage against Michigan, like Michigan is not remarkable, and so you should be able to contain the unremarkable, just as Georgia did. Ohio State not being able to do that is more about Ohio State than Michigan for me. Mm-hmm. So I think now if you're forcing me to answer that question, has Wisconsin found itself? And are they now back to being Wisconsin? And will this be the best version of Graham Mertz next year to where, no, he's not maybe a first rounder, but he's no longer this like he's better than Jet Cohn. He can elevate the program. So maybe that, and that's going to be a November 12th matchup next year in Ohio Stadium.
Linda says Michigan State because of their coach. And I mean, I think Mel Tucker's done a great job with that program, but I mean, that's an early game next year. I think that's kind of end of September, early October for Ohio State, going to Michigan State. The weather's probably going to be pretty good that early in the season. Ohio State, I can't imagine their defensive backfield is going to be substantially worse, but I also can't imagine it's going to be that much better. They have ridden the portal pretty hard. Mm-hmm. And
are we dismissing Michigan State too much?
I don't think we're dismissing Michigan State. I think Michigan State is a good team, but I think Michigan State, unless they significantly correct the issues that they had this year, they're not a good matchup for Ohio State. You may remember what happened the last time those two teams played.
Well, yes, I do like Peyton Thorne. I think he can do some things. He can do damage in the Big Ten. I don't think he can win you a national title, and that's. How many quarterbacks in the Big Ten? Can J.J. McCarthy? I think if you're talking, I'm going to assume Kyle McCord can because Brian Day chose him as a quarterback. I believe C.J. Stroud can. From what I've seen of J.J. McCarthy, he has the potential to do that, and I don't know if there's anybody else in the Big Ten that I think could be the kind of guy that beats a Georgia or an Alabama. And we just continue to go back to those two teams as the standard bearers because right now they are.
Yeah, I mean, J.J. McCarthy, Kyle McCord. I'm willing to listen to your. But this is someone who is literally a player, so he's not going to do it next year. 2023, willing to have that conversation. But yeah, I mean, as is league tradition, the quarterback player on the Big Ten was kind of not great this year.
But then, go ahead.
Yeah, and that is a position where you can't win a national championship without at least an above average quarterback. If you have like truly elite talent other places on the field, you can win a national championship. No one else in the Big Ten outside of Ohio State has like really elite talent at the bulk of positions around the field, which means you really need a quarterback who can light it up. And I don't see people around the league. At least very many people around the league who fit that description.
How many quarterbacks in the SEC can win a national championship? And
how many are on Georgia or
Alabama? Can Stetson Bennett do it? Can he beat Alabama? Because that's what it comes down to. We believe Bryce Young is good enough to do that.
Yes. But
who else looking at this list can do that? Hendon Hooker at Tennessee.
No.
Like half of these guys are gone. I mean, Matt Krug will go to the NFL. Max Johnson has transferred. Will Levis, Kentucky. No, Emory Jones has transferred. Zach Calzada has transferred.
Bo Nix has transferred.
So maybe maybe we shouldn't just ask this of the Big Ten. Really,
Yeah,
you
right.
got to ask it of every conference. How many
Well-
quarterbacks? And I guess let's wait until all of the plates stop
Mhm.
spinning in the transfer portal.
Well, in the college football playoff era, how many teams have won a game?
Yeah.
A game, not won the national championship, won a game, made it to the national championship game. Because there's the 4 easy answers, 5 easy answers, and I think it's Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, LSU, Alabama. Oh, have they?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
They won a couple of first rounders.
And did I say Ohio State yet?
Yes.
Okay. And Oregon. So that's 6. I've got 6. I can't think of another one. And, most of the other teams that have gotten in have gotten just erased in that first round. Now, Oklahoma got close like once, but then they've gotten completely erased basically every year since. Washington got completely annihilated when they were in. Michigan State got completely annihilated when they were in. Michigan got completely annihilated when they were in. Cincinnati got annihilated when they were in. Like, all these first round games are blowouts because the answer to this question is there are like 5 teams that can win the national championship.
And Oregon won a game that they needed to have the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback to do so when they did it. So,
But they beat a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback.
but I'm just
Yes,
you
but
need
yes.
legit quarterbacks.
Yes.
Against Clemson in the 2016 season for Ohio State.
Super chat from Timothy Mason. Bryson Shaw and Court Williams were 2nd and 3rd in tackles. Is that a sign of the development of or just Utah's scheme?
Bryson Shaw has been among the tackle leaders for much of the season for Ohio State. In fact, I think he was 3rd or 4th at one point. Let me see where he finished up this year. As all of the stats now are done. Yeah, he finished 3rd on the team with 59 tackles. So Ronnie Hickman led the team with 98. I can't believe he didn't finish with 100, although maybe Ohio State's stats are a little bit different. Tommy Eichenberg with the strong 17 tackles, just as predicted, finished 2nd on the team with 64. But Bryson Shaw, because he is that last line of defense, and there were many plays where everybody sees him chasing, but it's like safeties do a lot of chasing. That's it's in the job description. But I think he got better. Is he good enough? Is this the same argument we're having about the quarterback? Is he good enough as safety to win you a national championship? And I guess it depends on the other safety, because you can ask those same questions of anybody on that Ohio State defense right now. Who among the starters this year were good enough to win a national championship? And sometimes you can sort of hide guys, but you can't really. I mean, look at Ohio State trying tough Borland last year. Like,
right.
Denzel Burke didn't have his best game against in this one, but also had some great moments. And he I think him.
Yeah.
And
I'm willing to entertain the conversation about a healthy Josh Proctor. I'm willing to entertain that conversation.
Well, that's all we can do is have a conversation.
But it's just you didn't see it this year because he broke his leg in the middle of the second game, and they were running my preschool defense for the first 2 weeks of the season. So there's an interesting follow-up from Mike Smith that I was about to get to earlier before we got into super chats. Am I crazy for thinking Court Williams should have been playing a whole lot more than he did this season? And that's an interesting question. What do we think Court Williams is moving forward? Because the bullet doesn't exist anymore. He was brought in as the bullet, and now the bullet is not a thing. It seems to me, he doesn't seem like a deep safety type. So, I mean, is he a strong safety? Is he a Sam linebacker type? Is he doing what Cade Stover did during the Rose Bowl? Is that the best spot for him?
Well, what he was doing in the Rose Bowl, he and Cade Stover were part of the heavy package, if I recall, and where Court Williams would be the slot guy and Cade Stover would be the Sam. But I don't know that I was super impressed with Court Williams in the coverage aspect. He only had the one play where he got beat by the tight end, I believe. But I agree. I think he needs to be on the field. He had a sack. He is the way people talk about him, Tom. We say this all the time about him. Like, that's not normal. And so I feel like, well, show us why. Why are you talking about him? If you keep talking about him like this and don't play him, then what are you even doing? Like, you're wasting him, or you're lying to us, or somebody is just too good to be too. And the thing is, right now, is he a strong safety? Because that's Ronnie Hickman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Ronnie Hickman's your leading tackler. Now, did he play well, play great these last few games? No. And is his job safe? I mean, look what happened with Brendan White from 2018 to 2019, where the second half of 2018, Brendan White solidified the defense, and then 2019 he didn't play and transferred out by the end of the season. Is Court Williams the new Pete Werner? Is Ronnie Hickman the new Brendan White? Or does that have nothing to do with anything? Because it shouldn't.
Yeah, there's so many interesting moving parts here, because with Jim Knowles, I don't know the ins and outs of what Jim Knowles is really looking for from these roles, and it's going to be a 4-2-5, but it's going to be kind of a little bit of a different 4-2-5. And is he looking for faster, more agile guys, or is he looking for stronger? He needs stronger guys closer to the line of scrimmage to make up for the fact that they're lighter in the back. These are all really interesting questions that we may get to start start getting answers to this spring, maybe. But even then, it tends to be a lot of we gotta see.
I think you're still going to have heavy packages with 3 linebackers, because you look at the schedule.
Yeah,
they have Iowa, they have Wisconsin, they have Michigan, and then they will have probably Iowa or Wisconsin again in December, if both those teams, Ohio State being one of them, make Big Ten championship games. So you can't, no reason to play a 4-2-5, but you can fluctuate between heavy and light, as Michigan used to do. They'd have a Big Sam and then a Viper, and it was the same with Pete Werner and Brendan White until they didn't need Brendan White.
Yeah, until Pete Werner could just do everything.
Yeah. And so if Ohio State has somebody like that, great. If they don't, that's okay. Although so much of the substitution has to be done better, and you can't be caught like they were with some slow substitutions and defensive linemen not being set. Things need to be moving quicker, and I do expect that they will next year.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's going to be much smoother operating thing from top to bottom. And I think Matt Barnes, and maybe we need to do a little bit of an obituary for the Matt Barnes era at Ohio State. Matt Barnes this year reminds me a lot of Luke Fickell, where Luke Fickell in 2011, where it's like, he absolutely did the very best he could. He was put in an impossible situation. The plane is at 35,000 feet, and they're like, "Hey, can you fix this right now?" I was like, "Well, this isn't. Ideally, you'd like to do this on the ground. Like, ideally, you'd like to be doing this stuff in spring ball. But here we are. It's week 3. Here we are. We're 35,000 feet in the air, and we got to fix it. So okay." I mean, it was like the Apollo 13 defense this year, and you know what? They got the spacecraft back to Earth, and everyone survived. Sorry, spoilers. Sorry, they got the spacecraft back to Earth. They survived. They won the Rose Bowl. They're not going to send the same spacecraft up again next season, because they recognize that they may have gotten a little lucky there. But Matt Barnes, I think, deserves a lot of credit for what he was able to do in a very difficult spot. So that's worth kind of at least touching on. Because Luke Fickell was very much the same thing. It was like, well, I'm not ready to be a major program head coach. Also, I just lost my starting quarterback, my starting running back, my starting wide receiver, and my starting left tackle. And Joe Bauserman's my backup. So that's going to go great.
I was just looking for to talk about how unprepared, not caught off guard, I should say, that Luke Fickell was to be named the head coach, that he wasn't planning for at that time. I just remember the introduction press conference where his jacket seemed really large on him. Like he was not expecting any kind of press conference in the near future. And what he had in the closet just wasn't, maybe from his playing days, perhaps. And so I was looking for a picture of that to show you. But the internet only goes back so far, does not go back the requisite 10 years, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
He's the reverse Johnny Bravo. He didn't fit the suit. Here's a good one from DK Super Chat. Favorite non-work activity on a long flight? I'm guessing Tom listens to True Crime podcasts and Tony's a napper. I mean, I think he's fairly close on both.
I didn't nap any on the way out. I expect I will take a nap from Las Vegas to Los Angeles tomorrow, especially being up at 4 in the morning or whatever.
I hope we're going to Columbus on the second flight.
Perhaps we'll see.
Don't just get in a round trip.
That's the problem with the heavy.
LA
That's why I don't deep sleep because I don't want to miss my stop. Is it
Mhm.
like the bus?
Basically.
But I do. I'll listen. I'll download some podcasts. I watched on the way out. I watched Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, which was part of the Southwest movie dealie. I started to watch Fast and Furious 9.
Do you have to have seen 8 for the plot to make sense?
And in fact, if you haven't, that's better because, well, what's his face? Dom, who was the actor?
Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel and John Cena, the wrestler. Turns out they're brothers, Tom. So if you haven't seen any of the other movies, that will help the realism.
I assume that's a brother from another mother situation.
I don't know, but I didn't ask.
Mhm.
Of course, I didn't get into that. I didn't get to that far because I was actually like trying to nap, and I just couldn't do it, unfortunately. But I'm pretty sure this is a long week, and we are up. I try to stay on Eastern time as much as possible because it helps getting the workday done, and up by 6, downstairs working by like 7. It takes its toll, Tom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the problem with being on the West Coast is you have readers on the East Coast who are expecting content before like 1 p.m. generally. So
it's not easy.
You either gotta work ahead or get up very early in the morning. So yeah, I am a podcast person for sure. A lot of like Matt's podcasts. I have dabbled in true crime. There's one, I'll see if I can find it real quick. There's one about a series of murders in Malibu that I have listened to semi-recently. Lost Hills. The Front and Nationwide podcast, if you're a Blue Jackets person, is quite good. College Football Nerds is a good college football podcast. So, yeah, that's those are all good choices. But I always have a book packed too, because then I have time where I don't have children running up to me and interrupting me while I'm trying to read. So
if I do want to sleep, I will try reading a book on my phone, and it's like 10 minutes. I'm just done. It's perfect. If I really, really want to sleep, or I also do Sudoku.
Do you actually know how that works? You just fill the numbers in.
How it works.
Let's see. I'm going to scroll back to the beginning. We think we're caught up on super chats. Yes, we have had a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Which is awesome. That makes our life a little easier. Was that Teron Vincent's breakout game?
I wish I could have seen it up there. Like, you don't see as well, and you don't get to see replays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Tom, when the press box has the TVs like right above you, forget about it. You can't see any replays.
Mm-hmm.
In the Rose Bowl, it's a classy joint, but the replay screens are very small. It's pretty. There's no tackiness to it, which is bothersome.
Yeah.
But I agree. He's been the talk of one of the main talking points from this game was Teron Vincent. So they definitely needed that. I'm interested to see how many snaps he had because I'm guessing it was probably close to a season high. And the more you play him, the more production you get out of him. And expect to see a lot of him next year, assuming he's coming back. Mm-hmm. Because one, they need him, and two, it's time for him to give a full season. And he played in I think every game this year, but this is next year is an opportunity for him to build off of this, get in the backfield, see what he can do with Jim Knowles. I'm wondering how much money Jim Knowles is going to make some people next year, just with the aggression, the desire to get into the backfield more, and a cohesive, consistent defensive scheme, how that's going to help everybody.
Yeah, it seems like you're going to see, I was going to say you're going to see sack numbers go up. That you almost would have to see sack go up from some positions on the field. I think you're right. You're going to see potentially more production. You're going to see maybe a little bit more aggressive. But just if you're able to confuse the quarterback, confuse the offense, then you're putting your players in position to succeed, whether that's confusing the blocking scheme and then you're picking up TFLs, or confusing the quarterback and then you're picking up interceptions. you're going to see potentially more production in those based on what we sort of heard about Knowles so far. So yeah, I think that's possible. I did not have. You think it's hard to tell from up in the press box? Try watching from field level behind the offense on through a viewfinder of a camera. You don't have a great. It's not exactly the all 22 back there. So I have gotten a chance to rewatch the game. We watched the game after we got back to the hotel after the game, but it was the. And now we take you ahead. Now we're going to take a jump ahead in the action. It's like we just missed 3 drives. Like what? So
yeah, Teron Vincent 6 tackles. Ronnie Hickman only 3. To give you an idea. So yeah, I'll be looking for that once I get a chance to rewatch it. Maybe that's something I could do on the plane. Unless it's a book, then I will follow it.
Yes. Rank these Buckeye defenses: 2018, 2020, 2021.
And that's the thing, Tom. I had so many people reaching out to me. This is the worst Ohio State defense I've ever seen, and I'm like, do you remember 2018? And like, you can't say 2020 is the worst defense in any. They made the national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, these are relative.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have 2020 out of that picture, because when I'm thinking of who is worst, I immediately go to the 2018 situation, because there was just some badness throughout. I think 2017 got lumped. Saw like things never got really better in 2018, and even parts of 2020, were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So there were the terrible parts of 2020 enough to put them in that group, sure. But again, they did beat Clemson. And did they give up 400 yards passing? Yeah, but who cares?
Right. Yeah.
And they limited the points. So 2018 or this one, I think this defense is probably worse, because it was just such a jumbled mess. Whereas at least the 2018 team was a consistent mess. Like, it kept doing the same thing over and over again. And so you make minor tweaks. They didn't make major tweaks to like change the entire defensive scheme. We've Tom's the summer show, Tale of the Tape, 2018 defense against the 2021 defense, and
playing safety must be really hard. I think that's my takeaway of this whole conversation. Like, man, that must be, outside of university president, the hardest job in the world. The hard thing about this is they're bad in such different ways, but also kind of in exactly the same way. It's like all of them is like, well, the 2018, the defense was too complicated, and that was a coaching failure. 2021, well, we run this one thing, and hope no one picks up. And then you're changing from. But it's just, I guess there were fewer big plays this year. I mean, not as many. It was a different kind of bad. It was not 2018. I just constantly remember just 70-yard touchdowns. Just like, how many 70-yard touchdowns are they going to give up this week? 2, 3, and that wasn't it this year. And they were good at times this year in a way that they weren't necessarily good in 2017. Like, I just remember a lot of, the 2018, like the. Obviously, the Purdue game is the one everyone remembers, but wasn't that the year that Nebraska almost beat him in the horseshoe? Or was that 2017? That was 2018. That Nebraska came in and put up 31 points on them, and there was no one they could stop that year. This year, they had people they stopped. I mean, they stopped Michigan State. Like, there were types of offenses they could stop this year. There were also just bad matchups, and they ran into some bad matchups at bad times. So
I'm looking through over the last decade, and I know I said 2020 was not the worst. However, they got more points than any other defense in Ohio State recently, 25.8 points per game. But
they also didn't have the luxury of playing Akron and Bowling Green.
So they held opponents to 3.4 yards per carry. Tom, would you like to guess at what the 2018 defense held opponents to rushing?
It feels like 5.
It was 4.5.
Okay.
Now, however, 5.8 yards per play in 2018 allowed, 2020, it was 5.85. So
Yeah.
it's, and in 2021, you're looking at 5.86. No, I'm sorry, looking at the wrong one.
5.33.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's a half a yard per play better this year than it was before. So I guess I'm gonna make 2018 the worst. It just like that stuff doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and sometimes the whole.
And look at the players on this 2018 defense. Chase Young, Draymond Jones, Nick Bosa, all NFL starters. Pete Werner, Malik Harrison, Jonathan Cooper, all NFL starters.
Yeah.
That's insane that, is that coaching malpractice, coaching mal, whatever you want. Greg Schiano, as we took him to task throughout much of that year.
At the time.
So I think we did our jobs, but holy cow, how can I guess, Tom, it goes back to what you said, safeties.
Yeah, you have to have safety play.
But Brendan White was good the second half of the year, but and Jordan Fuller, I just boy oh boy, you screwed it up. You screwed it up.
Greg Schiano, much more comfortable working with Rutgers level talent than Ohio State level talent.
Very much so.
All right, we got a super chat from Nick. Even as a Michigan fan, that Rose Bowl game was jaw-dropping. I was salivating at the thought of the OSU offense versus the Georgia defense. Michigan was no match. And this is something that we talked about before the game. And, it's impossible to say anything without having anyone go, well, did you see the game last month? And it's just, college. This is the same conversation we have about the NCAA tournament every year. Like, you can be a good team, but another opponent could be a bad matchup for you, right? Georgia was a bad matchup for Michigan because what was Georgia bad at? Where was Georgia potentially vulnerable? Downfield passing. Michigan's downfield passing was like what, and I said this going into the game. This is not me, where is the downfield passing threat for Michigan? Because Caden McNamara is really not it. J.J. McCarthy, I think they figured out that J.J. McCarthy is the guy who is going to have to give them that because they're going to have to be able to do that. But without Ronnie Bell this year, you didn't have the guy they had the guy to throw the ball, maybe, but he's a true freshman, and they didn't have the guy to catch the ball. It's like, well, that's a problem. You have like half of the two things that you need in order to maybe threaten Georgia. It wasn't a good matchup for Michigan. Ohio State, Ohio State's defense would have given up 9,000 yards rushing to Georgia, but when they got the ball back, they would have gone. You would have seen they would have put up more than 11 points. I feel pretty confident that Ohio State would have put up more than 11 points on a fast, dry track indoors. And what you watched in the Rose Bowl, they didn't have Chris Olave. They didn't have Garrett Wilson. Like what would Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson have done against that Utah defense? Yes, Utah was playing a running back at corner at one point, and so this is the Utah defense is not the Georgia defense, but you put Ohio State on a fast, dry track. There is a reason they tend to stomp people in the Big Ten championship game, and it is because in a fast, dry track, they are better than a lot of teams.
Yeah, they can reach their full potential there. I was reading the live Rose Bowl game thread on a Michigan site, and it's fun to watch Michigan fans react. And eventually, it was just like, "Holy crap! This game is crazy. This game is awesome." And that's for any fan. You're watching that game. I don't know how you can't think the exact same thing, man. When you get to watch stuff that is absolutely insane and goes down to the wire, that's the game you hope you're getting ready to sit down to watch every single time. And the thing about college football is there's so many games that you get one of those not every week, almost every week you're going to get something crazy. And this one was the biggest stage of the day and couldn't have gone any wilder for anybody who's watching. This was for everybody.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
That was one of those games where, if a MAC game is doing that, everyone's like, everyone on Twitter like, get to the ESPN 7 and watch the Tuesday night MAC game because it is going ham. But that happened in the Rose Bowl, and that doesn't happen very often. And I still haven't seen TV numbers on that game, but I am going to assume it did bananas numbers because you've got Ohio State in, which means you've got the entire state of Ohio watching. You also have it's the Rose Bowl, so the Rose Bowl always gets incredible TV numbers because it's this incredible, this tradition of, unlike basically anything else in college football, And so you know, it feels like you get 12, 15 million people watching the Rose Bowl every year because it's the Rose Bowl. And then they didn't play this game last year. They played it in Jerry World. So you didn't even have that nostalgia from last year. You've been jonesing for it for a couple of years. And then you probably had the car wreck of Ohio State right now, and watch Ohio State get stomped by this, this scrappy band of underdogs from Utah. I'm going to guess they did huge numbers, but I don't know that I've seen them yet. Have you?
No,
I think Tony's looking for them, yeah.
right now.
Okay.
I don't see anything yet.
So yeah, it's that was a really, really fun game. I think I've said this before, that was, it is maybe the most exciting game I've ever seen in person, and B, my favorite place in the world to watch college football. So it was like, that was a pretty good way to start the year.
That's a great way to start the year. Right on the right foot, on both right feet, on both left feet. And yeah, I'm not seeing anything yet. But I just see a lot of people, like a lot of experts, saying, I won't be surprised if this outranks some of the playoff games.
Honestly, if that beat the Alabama-Cincinnati game, or even the Georgia-Michigan game, like the end of the Rose Bowl probably got more viewers than the end of the Orange Bowl, because the Orange Bowl was completely non-competitive, and everyone's going out for New Year's Eve. So why would you stay in and watch a game that's a 40-point game or 30-point game, whatever it was? Here's an interesting. Our case is Big Ten needs realignment. That's an interesting thought, because the idea, of course, being the imbalance between the divisions in the league. That the East has. There was at one point this year when the East had the top 7 recruiting classes. I don't think that's still the case, but pretty recently, the top 7 recruiting classes in the Big Ten were the Big Ten East schools. You've got teams in the West who are good. Wisconsin's usually pretty good. Iowa is, good to like eh. Minnesota every once in a while is good. Northwestern will have the 1 out of every 3 years where they're good. But there's not a, you don't have like juggernaut team in the West. Like if everything goes great, Wisconsin wins 11 games and goes to the Rose Bowl. That's like the great Wisconsin season. If Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State goes to the playoffs or wins, has that kind of like good season, they go to the playoffs. If it's Ohio State, they potentially win the national championship game. There is a difference there. Would you, do they need to split it up? Because I think my concern with the Big Ten is it may be a little bit systemic. It's not like, this is a downturn. This is not like, the SEC East is bad, but, Florida's kind of down and Tennessee's down, but these are teams you've seen win in the past. But I don't know, outside of adding a bunch of Eastern teams, if they add, I don't know, Virginia and North Carolina, and they kick the Michigan schools to the West, does that fix anything?
Well, I think one of the things that I like about how it is now, and that I think Jim Delaney liked, is it provided an opportunity for all of the Big 12, Big 10 West teams to make the playoffs, because it kept many of them from having to play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we saw Iowa come 1 game away from playing for the playoffs. Wisconsin 1 game away from playing for the playoffs. And these are 2 teams that do not recruit like playoff teams. But yet, if they can just beat, if everything comes together, you beat the Minnesota and whatever, and you are like, all of these teams are beatable. Mm-hmm. But if you have that 1 year where you're just a little bit better than those guys and you get the right schedule, then all you need to do is beat the East team to go to the playoffs. And I think it gives 2 different kinds of programs. It's like you've got the East, obviously, that do it through recruiting, and then you've got the West who do it through like fortunate scheduling and just outlasting, and it's different brands for different people. However, Tom, just go to the way the Big 12 does it. If you don't want to realign, and just do what the Big 12 does. There's precedent there, and maybe that creates a better product in a Big Ten championship game. How much would the Big Ten West presidents and athletic directors object to that?
Probably much? What is our scale, like 1 to 10, or I feel like the answer is a lot. Now, the interesting thing about you talking about the Big Ten West and how sometimes you can kind of have that one season where the schedule falls right and everything falls right, and you have a little more talent than normal, and you have that one kind of puncher's chance win over the superior team from the East. And I can actually think of a recent example that wasn't the Big Ten West team that you might apply that to as well.
Michigan State.
Maybe also them.
Michigan. Sorry. And then look what happens. Like you're not trying to get them to win a national championship
Right.
because you know they can.
Right.
You're just trying to get them there.
Right. And that's what, the year that Iowa, they didn't win the Big Ten, but they had that classic against, it wasn't a classic. It was a close game with high stakes. I wouldn't describe it as a classic, but it was a close 2015 Big Ten championship game against Michigan State. They lose that. They go to the Rose Bowl, and they just get annihilated by Stanford, like just destroyed. That game was over. I think people were not quite settled into their seats, and it felt like it was 21-0. So, but Iowa fans, like I remember Pasadena was loaded with Iowa fans, and I'm sure they all had a great time. And you know what? That's cool. Like Ohio State fans are a little spoiled. It's like, oh, it's a Rose Bowl. Oh, why would we do that? And
make sure you wear gloves.
If you are not a fan base for whom the college football playoff seems like a birthright many years, that's a huge deal. The Rose Bowl is a huge deal. There are, even Michigan. I think Michigan, if Michigan got to go to the Rose Bowl, Michigan would probably be pretty happy about it. I don't know if there's anyone else in the Big Ten that would kind of turn their nose up at the Rose Bowl the way the Ohio State fans kind of did this year. You wonder if maybe that changes now that people have seen, have this association of the last 4 times Ohio State's been there. All 4 of the games have been pretty close games into the last 5 minutes, and they've won all of them. So you would think that would be enough, and I'm banging my drum, standing on my soapbox every time, saying you should go, dummies. It's awesome, and then people don't listen, but that's fine. Stephen Piper, someone we will listen to because he sent us a super chat. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciated the insight and entertainment you guys gave us this year. I will never go tired of Tom's SEC voice. Thank you guys for making a fun season even better. Thank you. Thank you, Cletus, and thank you, Stephen. That is very kind. You guys make it a lot of fun for us too, as well. Like football season is my favorite time of year. I would assume it probably is for you as well, because you get to hang out with me, which I like it for the football. He likes it.
Tom, I hang out with you all year long. The only distraction is football, so that's why I like football. It makes the time more tolerable with you.
Super chat from Nick. At what point would you have pulled Cade McNamara? I would have said screw it and benched him for McCarthy at no later than down 14-0, maybe earlier.
When exactly did they bench him? Because it felt like he eventually got benched, and I didn't watch all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did see where he was pretty much the guy in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
When should they have benched him? Tom, when did we tell them to just go to McCarthy? Was it in September?
Yeah, there is a ceiling for Cade McNamara, and the ceiling for Cade McNamara is exactly the ceiling they bumped into. Because this is a conversation we've had earlier in this show if you're watching on YouTube, and probably several days ago if you were listening to it on a podcast, because we're splitting this up into a couple different episodes of the podcast. But you have to have, if you don't have, like, you can get away with a Stetson Bennett quarterback if you have like a crazy cuckoo bananas defense or something you can lean on. Like you can you could probably win a national championship. Stetson Bennett is probably the closest to like a Craig Krenzel type quarterback that you can come up with right now among like the elite programs. But you've got to have a 2002 Ohio State level defense to get away with that. And Michigan doesn't have that. Like they've got good pieces, but they don't have the whole defense. And a lot of those good pieces are probably leaving after this year. So then you don't have that at all. You're going to have to, this is something that Nick Saban realized. Nick Saban, you notice Nick Saban is not trying to grind out 17, 13 games anymore. Nick Saban is playing modern football. He figured it out. Right now, you have to win this way. Or, you can play Wisconsin football and win to a point. You can play, Jim Harbaugh is not nearly as man-ball as he used to be, but you can gets you to a certain point. But if you don't have like elite athletes around the field, you hit that ceiling. Cade McNamara has a ceiling that J.J. McCarthy potentially doesn't. Now, I think playing J.J. McCarthy this year, yes, they won against Ohio State, but it feels like, if they play that game 10 times in, on 10 different weeks and in 10 different weather conditions, Ohio State probably still wins 7 or 8 of them. The dice came up correctly for them and they won the game, and all credit to them. And, there are a lot of teams that would not beat Ohio State even 2 out of 10 times this year. So, that's good. But, J.J. McCarthy probably gets them up to 3 instead of 2. And that makes a difference. But, he's a true freshman this year. So I think Harbaugh managed this year to, I have to win as many games as possible because I have a contract that essentially makes me free to fire after this season. So he had to manage to that. And, long term, it would have been better for them to have J.J. McCarthy playing this year. This was the best possible case scenario season for them. So, it sounds stupid. They made, they won the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State. They win the Big Ten. They make the playoff. But I think longer term, you would have been better off having McCarthy there.
It will be interesting to see if there is eventually the Ohio State thing where Buckeye fans were saying in 2017, they should have gone with Dwayne Haskins. Mm-hmm. The revisionist, over JT Barrett, because JT Barrett was not able to win a national championship, was not good enough to throw the ball to win those kind of games against the elite defenses. And that's where Cade McNamara is as well. And I guarantee you, Tom, if Georgia loses to Alabama, the Georgia fans are going to put the majority of this on Stetson Bennett mm-hmm. because he wasn't good enough. And it's one thing to get them there. It's another thing entirely to put them over the top. And that's where Nick Saban started, I'm no longer doing this 4-star quarterback game manager. Let's go get the best guy. Mm-hmm. And whatever that takes, thorough recruiting, obviously. Go get the best guy and then just ride him.
You've gone. There's a big gap between Greg McElroy and Jacob Coker and some of those guys to Tua or Mac Jones. You went from the Bama quarterback being the guy with the bangs who hands the ball off mm-hmm. and finishes the game 10 for 15 for 130 yards and a touchdown, to Bryce Young winning the Heisman. Bryce Young is he is an elite quarterback. He won the Heisman over C.J. Stroud this year. They're certainly in the same conversation talent-wise. But you look around, who are the programs that are winning? Georgia has made the playoff this year, but they haven't done it much before that. This is only the second time they've made it. It's Ohio State, which is constantly pumping out first-round quarterbacks. It's Alabama, which is now constantly pumping out first-round quarterbacks. And before that was also Alabama. And LSU won the one year that they had the first overall draft pick. Clemson, when you've got Deshaun Watson or you've got Trevor Lawrence. That's – and when you don't have a quarterback like that, DJ Uiagalelei, he was supposed to be that guy, hasn't been that guy so far. And then you're 10-3 and you're playing in where were they? The Mayo Bowl?
No.
They were somewhere they were not expecting to be. Were they?
Mayo Bowl was South Carolina and North Carolina.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes. Shane Beamer getting concussed by a bucket of mayo.
Poor guy.
That is the dream.
Tom, you had asked how are Michigan fans feeling about next year? Mm-hmm. So I threw up a poll asking them, do you feel like are Michigan are they likely the Big Ten champs in 2022? Are they expecting OSU to win the Big Ten or somebody else to win the Big Ten? 9.4% think they will win the Big Ten. But this is also 43% of people just clicking to see results. Basically, 4-1 think that Ohio State will win, and 2-1 over Michigan over anybody else except for Ohio State. So still expecting the same old, and this year was the anomaly, which I think I think that will bear out.
I'm going to need to see it again before I start thinking that that's not the case.
Yeah. And you can have 2 years of anomalies, man.
You can. I like the fact that the lighting, we just moved from one hotel to another and the lighting is just extremely weird. This looks like a Kubrick film in here with the.
I could go turn on that light.
I don't think that's going to help its way across the room. We're going to live in the yellow world of Stanley Kubrick. Dave Valensky whose chat comes up yellow because it's a super chat. Thank you again, Dave. As a Minnesota fan, I would love to go to the Rose Bowl, and I think there should be realignment. Michigan State going to the West, Purdue and Illinois going to the East. I mean, first of all, I cannot express to people how stupid Ohio State fans sound to everyone else saying, why would we go to the Rose Bowl? That's stupid. Like there is for anyone over the age of probably 30, the Rose Bowl is probably still holds a pretty significant place in people's hearts and traditions. And it's just like for generations across the Midwest, that was the ultimate goal of the season. And it's going to take, more than a little, more than, if you have TikTok on your phone, maybe that's not true for you, but for pretty much everyone else, that when Illinois goes to the Rose Bowl, they fill the place. When, Wisconsin still fills the place.
Look at what Utah did.
Yeah, Utah, no one ever dominates a crowd when Ohio State's playing in a bowl game, ever. I literally cannot remember that ever happening. And Utah had, I would say, 65% of the Rose Bowl, something like that. But this was the first time they ever went, and it was a big deal. And Salt Lake City's 10 hours away, so they could just get in a car and drive. And
it was a big deal to the players too.
It was a very big deal to the players, and you could tell. And if Iowa goes again, if Minnesota goes, if Nebraska goes, do you think you want me to tell you how many Nebraska fans will be in the Rose Bowl if Nebraska, next year Nebraska goes 10-2, loses to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and goes to the Rose Bowl? There will be 95,000. Whoever they're playing will get no tickets. It will just be Nebraska fans there.
It's like the time Nebraska and Notre Dame played.
Oh yeah.
And it was in Notre Dame, and Nebraska just bought all the tickets and bought them from Notre Dame fans because the prices were so good. Notre Dame fans had no choice, but also Notre Dame at that point was not very good.
Mm-hmm. Was it a bowl game? So to his point on Michigan State going to the West, Purdue and Illinois going to the East. That's interesting. It balances things more. Over a long enough historical timeline, that probably helps. I think the issue you're going to run into is you're screwing up a lot of traditional rivalries. You're pulling Michigan away from Ohio State, pulling Michigan away from Penn State. You're pulling Michigan State away from Penn State. And sir, are you trying to tell me you would compromise the land grant trophy? Sir, how dare you? I think the actual solution is probably pods. That's a concept where instead of having a division, you essentially have 3 protected rivals, and you play those teams every year, and then you rotate through the rest of the league, and that solves one problem, which is the leagues where, like the SEC right now, they only play 8 conference games, and they play 6 in their division, and they play 1 cross-division protected rivalry. So Alabama always plays Tennessee, and Auburn always plays Georgia, and Mississippi State always plays Kentucky because someone had to get left out. And and then you're just kind of like Florida and Texas A&M, I think, have played once since Texas A&M came to the league, and then the second trip, like for the first time since joining, Texas A&M is going to visit the Swamp in 2024 or 2026 or something ridiculous like that. I looked this up a while ago, so the numbers may not be exactly right, but it's like if you've been in a conference with someone for a decade and you've never played in their stadium, are you really in a conference with that team? So
sounds like you're more of an alliance.
I like your thinking, Kevin.
Come on.
There is, the pod idea is kind of intriguing because you kind of protect those rivalries. So Michigan and Ohio State and Michigan State and, Penn State, I guess, are in the same pod, but then, Maryland and Rutgers are going to want to be in the same pod as Penn State too. So
they can ride on the door floating in the water outside of the raft.
What that might do, if you clump them like that, and then you take Rutgers and Maryland and you send them to, put them in a pod with Indiana and Purdue, maybe that then those teams have more winnable games. And you get those teams that do kind of float to the surface. Now, then you're compromising the Purdue-Illinois rivalry, which they play for at Cannon, which means it's serious business. So I don't think we've solved all of the world's
No.
problems here. I may have to actually do this on paper and find matchups that work out correctly.
That sounds like a summer show, Tom.
It does.
But also the Purdue, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers pod also sounds like the evil twin that you feed the fish bones and fish heads to, and you never acknowledge that their existence, and then that's I think very the evil twin pod.
Dave Valensky says you have to have cross-divisional rivalries, which is what the SEC does. Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois, Northwestern.
And they had that with the legends and leaders because Ohio State and Michigan were not in the original and were not together. As we know, Michigan part of the legends, Ohio State part of the leaders, and wherever anybody else was, nobody remembers.
Man,
I think Indiana was Atlantic and Purdue was Coastal.
You could put a gun to my head and say you need to tell me where at least which division, but 5 Big Ten teams were, and I couldn't tell you with great certainty that Ohio State was in the leaders.
Dom, I feel like I'm going to have to quiz you now.
There was the answer is going to be shrug emoji. I can already tell you the answer to this quiz. We were watching a high school All-American game earlier today, and I don't even remember the team names where it was like Icons and something else. Was it Legends and Icons? It was like, oh man, this is the TikTok Jim Delaney version of team naming. It was.
All right, Tom. I have the original, so I'm just going to ask you the teams, and you tell me which division, Legends or Leaders. Are you ready?
Here's what is going to happen. I'm going to spoil your game, and I'm just going to guess Legends for everyone, and then I'm going to get 50% correct. And you know what? I'm counting that as a win. Go ahead.
No, I don't want you to spoil the game. That's no fun.
I'll tell you what. I will try and remember which teams were in Ohio State's division because I feel like there was a mnemonic to help with the.
Yes.
It was like all the M teams were in the Legends, right? So it was like Michigan State, Minnesota, Maryland. Was Northwestern in that division?
Maryland and Rutgers were not yet part.
Oh. Wow, what a grim time.
What a time to be alive.
So
we didn't have Rutgers and Maryland, but we still had Legends and Leaders.
Wasn't it Michigan, Minnesota, Michigan State were in the Legends division. Okay, so the leaders would have been Ohio State, Penn State. I'm already doing better than I thought I would. Was Northwestern in Legends?
Yes.
Okay. So now I've got 4 and 2. What's going to happen is I'm going to run out of fingers to count on in a minute, and then I'm really in trouble. And Nebraska was in the league. I think Nebraska was in the leaders division because Ohio State played Nebraska. No, they didn't play them in 2011, so they would have been in the Legends division. 5 in the Legends division. I see now I just figured it out. I got to think about who Ohio State played every year back then.
That's cheating, Tom.
Now I'm trying to run through the 2013 schedule in my head, and it's not. Was Cal in the league? What about Buffalo? Purdue, I think, was a leaders team.
You are correct, sir.
Indiana was a leaders team.
Yes. This is amazing.
Now
it may not be amazing to listen to or watch.
This is the hardest I've had to think in a long time. I'm at 9-0
since the ACTs, SATs.
Yeah, I'm an East Coast guy. Yeah, this reminds me very much of we did a fun family activity that our library had where they gave you Oreo cookies, all sorts of different kinds of Oreo cookies, and you had to taste test them and figure out which one is the marshmallow, which one is the mocha, and my whole family was really they did well, but it was like 7 out of 10, pretty good. I did it, and I got the first 8 right, and I'm like, I got it, I'm gonna nail it, 10 out of 10, and then I mixed up the last 2. So now I've got my 9 correct. So I'm already bowl eligible. Kentucky just gave me a contract extension because I've got my 9 wins. I don't even remember which teams I have left.
I'm stunned that you kept talking because now I know you've lost your place.
Completely lost my place.
And if you say the same team twice, that means you are wrong.
Can you tell me my 3 teams who I have left?
You have Iowa left.
Okay.
I believe you have Illinois left.
Okay.
And you have Wisconsin left.
Okay, Wisconsin is going to be in. Boy, I don't remember any of those teams playing Ohio State in 2013. I mean, they must have. Ohio State played a full schedule in 2013, right? That wasn't another
7
COVID
games,
year.
that was it. Just
No,
7
another
games.
COVID year. Boy, I'm going to say Illinois was in the Ohio State division. Ohio State was in the leaders division. Illinois.
Correct.
Okay, so now I literally have to just decide Wisconsin and Iowa.
Yes.
Um,
One of these was the only team I was sure, other than Ohio State, where it
Oh,
was in
you know
the-
what? Wisconsin played Nebraska. So Nebraska was in the Legends division. So Wisconsin was in the Leaders division because they were the team that was in third place and went to the Big Ten championship game in 2012. Tony, we have done it. This is the greatest moment in podcast history. I cannot believe I did that.
That's pretty impressive.
I'm going to write myself a Wikipedia page, and that's going to be the only thing on there.
You know,
Correctly remembered all 12 Legends and Leaders teams.
the most impressive thing is that you thought it out. You talked it out like, who wants to win a millionaire? You put everything out there, spot on, no guessing. That was impressive. I'm shocked. I have nothing else to say. Kudos to you, Tom. I hope we've dropped 170 people. We've dropped 170 viewers during that, but Tom doesn't care. He's so happy right now.
Oh, that was maybe the greatest thrill of my life. Trenton says on the broadcast, I said it was probably an 80-20 split. There was definitely not an 80-20 split. You could tell especially at the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, when they did the moment of loudness for Utah, it was very easy to tell because all of the phones with the lights on, it was like 2/3 of the stadium. But on the press box side, which is not the side of the TV cameras, and that was all Ohio State. So. All right, let's see. The Cheez-It Bowl, Trenton says. That was the bowl Clemson was in.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, we're caught up on Super Chats now.
Good.
I'm going to scroll back, see if we're missing anyone else here.
Feel free to continue to ask questions. We will get to those.
Someone says, ew, basketball. Hard or great.
Tom, I wanted to mention something that, that's going on as we speak. So this is something that I saw after the game, after the Rose Bowl. Kerry Combs, current Ohio State assistant coach, was asking to have his picture taken with other current assistants, I think, like Tony Alford, Mickey Marotti, as if this was the last time they were going to be together. Mm-hmm. So that's just one of those other things that you come across that on the field, you see stuff like that, and you're like,
yeah,
that seems a bit different than normal. And Kerry Combs is definitely a hugger, and he was hugging a lot of people like he does. That's just his thing after the games like that. But interesting, something to keep in mind, because they're going to be more than just the Matt Barnes, Jim Knowles thing. And at this point, if Al Washington is the only guy back, I'm not going to be shocked. In fact, I think I'm now to the point where if anybody in addition to Al Washington is back
on defense,
yes, I'm going to be surprised.
Yeah, and I've been kind of saying for a week or two, I keep kind of hearing and getting the vibe 3 to 4 may go, and that's that's kind of in that neighborhood. And again, we'll see. And if you're listening to this podcast 4 days from now, you will be going, you dummies.
Well, I'm looking at the time. I think this will be a Monday, Tuesday pod.
Wednesday.
But if this is a Sunday pod, the third.
Oh, sorry, I used all my brain power on the Legends and Leaders. I don't have any way. I have no way to.
Oh no, brains are just oozing out Tom's eyes and ears.
I have no way to figure out days of the week now. Since Sunday, then Thursday, right? Is that not right?
Tom, stop coloring on your computer screen.
Hummus Hero asks, will Josh Proctor be healed up enough to get in shape for the opener, I wonder?
I mean, it sounds like things are moving ahead of schedule, in shape. I mean, these guys are always in shape in the greater sense. But, yeah, I mean, you've got all spring. You've got the summer. That's when guys are getting into shape anyway. I'm expecting him to be a starter next year, to be a contributor. Now, is that way off base? I mean, maybe. I think he's been gone long enough to where he should be good. But again, the first year back from any type of major injury like that, unless it's like an ACL, because that is so normal now. Like this is not that. This is a broken leg. But we're not hearing any like, oh no, setbacks. And because we've had other players where significant injuries where, oh yeah, setbacks. So, maybe another 2 months. But so far I haven't gotten into that. I haven't, no cause for concern, but I don't know that spring is on the table, like full go or anything like that. Is it going to be a Cam Brown situation where he's running during spring? Just be happy he's running.
Yeah, and there was something that someone at some point in, I think, day at one of the pre-Rose Bowl press conferences got asked about Josh Proctor, and basically he's ahead of schedule, I think. And I mean, it's a fractured leg. And so that's not going to be the easiest recovery to come, easiest injury to come back from. But if he's ahead of schedule, that's probably not more than a 12-month injury. So if he's ahead of schedule, I think limited activity in spring ball, we see him jogging around with a yellow jersey on or something like that for spring ball. And then he's back out in the field summer. I think that's, and again, I'm not officially a doctor. I believe Sue is the only doctor on this podcast, but I am. I think that's kind of the timetable that I've heard. The real question to me is, we haven't heard a specific diagnosis on Lathan Ransom as of the time we're recording this. That looked, from my vantage point on the field, like it may be a very similar type of injury to Josh Proctor, kind of lower leg compound fracture kind of injury. That's, he's 3 months behind Josh Proctor. Assuming it's the same injury, he's now 3 months behind Josh Proctor. So at what point is Lathan Ransom in a good spot? And, these are guys who are going to have to learn a new defense, and you can do it on the chalkboard for a certain, because they're learning this in 1973, as we all know.
They have dry erase board now, Tom, just so you know.
They can do it. They can do it in the film room. But, as far as taking it out on the field and doing it at full speed on the field, like that's going to be an additional challenge for him. And, so now you've got a couple of question marks at safety. And there is that safety from Oklahoma State who's in the portal, which I think that's a reasonable question to ask. And
there's also Brandon Joseph from Northwestern. That
there is. Yeah.
Anybody, even with 2 starting safeties, should go after, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, there are guys in the portal, and we had a thread on our board at one point that, is Ryan Taylor at the portal? It's like, you're not going to get literally everyone. Like, you can't, that's not.
He's got
that's not how it works.
A gift card, and he's just not using it at the portal, Tom. He got it for his birthday, and it's just sitting on the counter, never going to use it. And he saves up his gift cards, and it's so annoying because, use it or you're going to lose it. These are like cell phone minutes, Tom.
All right, I'm going to read the super chat from Nick, and you were going to read the one from Hearing Aid Guy 69 right below that, not out loud, because we're not going to read that out loud. Nick says, do you think it's more likely that Travion Henderson turns into the next great Ohio State back, or that he's just a solid bridge back to the next star running back? I get J.K. Dobbins vibes from him. I mean, am I wrong there?
No, we've been comparing him to J.K. a little bit.
Yeah, and so when I say I get J.K. Dobbins vibes from him, you're thinking third season J.K. Dobbins, 2019 J.K. Dobbins, who rushed for 2,000 yards, and Travion Henderson's nothing like that right now. Think back to 2017, and he had the big game against Indiana in 2017, and jumped on the scene right away, and it was like, holy cow, who's this kid? He's going to rush for 1,000,000 yards, and then it was like he was 1,000-yard back every season. But I remember doing interviews in 2018 when the topic in the middle of the season was, what's wrong with J.K. Dobbins? And is he trying to, the theory was that he was trying to hit too many home runs, and he wasn't just taking what was, and he was trying to bounce stuff outside, and he was trying to use that incredible jump cut that he had, and he wasn't just putting his head down and getting the 6 yards when he needed to get the 6 yards. I think you're seeing some of that with Travion Henderson as well, and that's something that you're going to learn. That's going to come with over time. That's going to sort of come. He had a great freshman season. I don't know exactly what he finished at. It was 1,200,
1,403.
1,403. Oh no, I meant that was Dobbins total. I meant Henderson. But he was in that neighborhood, and in only 13 games. But he did it not having played last year, so you kind of get the freshman wall thing. He was at 16. Oh no, 1255. Yeah, 1255. I mean, that's a very good season. That's what was Maurice Claret's freshman season? 1400.
1237.
1237. Okay.
Playing like 9.5.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But that's a very good season, and eventually it's going to come. I think he will. I don't know if he's going to be a 2,000-yard back, because I think that now that Ryan Day is in more Ryan Day mode, I don't know that Ryan Day is going to want to run the ball enough to get him 2,000 yards.
But Ryan Day did it with J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, but I think Ryan Day is turning more into Ryan Day and not less. I mean, I think Ryan Day is like evolving into his final form right now, and the next time that I hear Ryan Day say, "I think we ran the ball too much today," like at that point we'll reverse that conversation. But I think he could be a 7 yards a carry back for them when he's what did J.K. Dobbins average when his?
Well, he was at 7.3.
Yeah,
7.2, and then Travion finished 6.8 this year. So
I mean he's but it be able to and sustain those numbers where you're not necessarily getting floated by just one huge day against Tulsa in some ways. That's I think he has that ability. I think he could be a 1,600, 1,700 yard, 20 touchdown back for them. I don't, I think I guess the short answer after a very long answer to your question is next great OSU back.
Yeah, and J.K. Dobbins' year in 2019, his average 6.7 yards per carry. That's your numbers the average is going to be less than the freshman years, because he was used so much more, and so there's more short yard and stuff, more goal line, but still 6.7 yards per carry as a workhorse, carried about 300 times. I don't expect that really from Henderson, because 300 carries, he finished with 184 this year. Like the days of Ohio State only ran the ball 423 times this year, and that's including sacks. So the idea that any Buckeye is going to be running the ball 300 times again, I think is, even though I think Ohio State will still run the ball under Ryan Day, unlike Tom, but 1,500 yards, 1,600 yards, I think is really, especially in the era of the transfer portal, where if you're Mayan Williams, Tom, carried the ball twice in the Rose Bowl, and the team only ran the ball 20 times. So what is your role next year? Yeah, you're the backup. What does that actually mean? 2 carries? We don't talk about guys transferring, but if you are a guy who has been able to start at Ohio State, and in this little bit of a game in the Rose Bowl, he made an impact. He kind of righted things a little bit. He gave Ohio State a little bit of momentum running the ball and moving the chains. Why would you come back for, and I'm not trying to chase him out, I'm just, if you put yourself in this running back mindset, do you want to come back and week to week get 2 to 5 carries, knowing that the 1 or 2 times you get 16, that you've done something with it, and why can't I get more? At one point in this game, it felt like just stick with Mayan Williams, and that was after like 1 carry, because Travion Henderson wasn't getting it done. And so I think that's going to be really difficult. I mean, he had 71 carries this year in 10 games, and could start a lot of places.
Yeah, I think you could put him on most any other Big Ten team, and he's at least a rotation back, if not a starter. And that's going to be tough, because I think they're going to have Evan Pryor and then Dallin Hayden, the true freshman. And Evan Pryor, I mean, unless he really puts on, unless Evan Pryor puts on 15, 20 pounds, which I don't think he's going to do in one off season, he's not going to be your every down back. He's your more situational passing game, third down, the old Ronnie Harmon, or, that kind of back.
Wow, Tom.
Darren Sproles, that better? I'm trying to compare him to like a super short guy, but that kind of third down back. There's an opportunity there for whoever sticks around. If you're the second running back on the team, how often does a running back make it through a year completely unscathed and not get tired? You wonder if the coaching staff, I would certainly assume, wants to keep him around. I wonder if the coaching staff kind of lays out a plan for him. Because I think I remember them doing that with Mike Weber. Didn't they have kind of a plan for Mike Weber? And because Mike Weber, there was conversation that, well, is he going to leave for the NFL? Is he going to come back? And they kind of laid out a plan for him for 2018 when he came back, because he missed a bunch of that 2017 season with the torn hamstring. And it was like, well, has this guy just passed me? And then he did get to play. He didn't, I don't know that he ever got the ball as much as he wanted to while he was at Ohio State, but he's a running back, so that's what that, get the ball enough.
But I mean, Mayan Williams averages over 7 yards a carry and can't see the ball. 26 carries over his last 6 games. I mean, or 5 games. You're asking him a lot. Now you're going to have to promise him, I think, that we will get you more involved. Like, you don't need to go somewhere else to be a rotational back. You can be part of the game plan here. And I know early in the season, he was like talking about the 9 carries against Minnesota or the 14 carries against Oregon. He said, that's fine. I'm okay with that. As long as we win, he's okay with it. After a season of this, I don't think he's going to be okay with 2 carries, 4 carries, 1 carry. And it's, one of the things we talk about a lot on the show when we drop in the Tony Alford, keeping players happy. That's the player's job to keep him happy. And there was also some stuff, Kevin Wilson talking about keeping offensive linemen happy. If you want to keep Mayan Williams, I believe he's going to have to not be promised, but just he's going to have to carry the ball more. And as we've seen, guys have no problem quitting season if they feel like, well, my future here is nil. And it's you don't want to lose somebody mid-season because you planned on them.
Yeah.
But again, you can be the number 2 guy, but if you're only running the ball 22 times a game or whatever, and 15 of those are going to somebody else, and a couple of those as a quarterback, like there's not a lot of room. And we used to say there's no room for a 3rd guy. Right now, the Buckeyes throw the ball so much, there's hardly room for a 2nd guy.
Yeah,
but you need it.
You have to have that guy, because otherwise, if the first guy gets hurt, then you're really in trouble. You don't want to have the just happy to be there guy who's the 3-star who is just thrilled to be at Ohio State and isn't really an Ohio State caliber player. Like, that doesn't actually solve your problem, because then if the first guy gets hurt and he's your backup, like, well, then you got a problem because you don't have a running back anymore. And I mean, of anyone on the roster, Mayan Williams probably closest fits that description. And he's a 3-star Ohio kid. He was committed to Iowa State before he came to Ohio State, and that is that's someone that I think a lot of people, when they took the commitment, said, why are they taking this guy? This guy's not an Ohio State caliber player. And he has proven that he is an Ohio State caliber player, but they also have other guys who they think maybe obviously they think TreVeyon Henderson gives them a better chance to win right now. And is Mayan Williams willing to be patient, or is Mayan Williams going to say, I'm gonna go to Cincinnati, or I'm gonna go to wherever else? And
Iowa State.
I mean, I think that Mayan Williams would be well served to stick it out, because I think Mayan Williams would be a very good complementary back, because he does things a little differently than TreVeyon Henderson. They're not carbon copy players, and you could have roles for both of them and situations for both of them. I think Ohio State is probably going to try and lay those out for Mayan Williams to put him in a position where he's a little more comfortable with, I have not been forgotten. I have not been completely passed over. I have a role on this team, and here's what it is.
It's interesting, because we both have talked about in the past Mike Weber's reaction in the locker room after whichever, like,
Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, where he just was not happy, and you could tell. And then they'd have to talk him down after the season. And again, I'm not saying any of that is going on with Mayan Williams. It's just for a guy who is good and should be could be playing elsewhere, I think they're going to have to do some talking, and they're going to talk to everybody. Like, they're going to talk to everybody about their position on the depth chart, their future, what they see from them, and there are going to be some guys where they don't really see a future. I don't think that's the case for Mayan Williams. I think they're going to be like, oh no, we definitely see we can use you. We want you back. There are plans, But man, when you have CJ Stroud, it's hard to like. Every time you run the ball, it's an opportunity that CJ Stroud could have hit somebody for 50 yards, and by that, that's football. You got to run it the ball. You got to run it sometimes, I guess.
Speaking of CJ Stroud, Michael Hogg has a question. He says, "Do you think that both Aiden O'Connell from Purdue and CJ Stroud will be the best two quarterbacks next year in the Big Ten?" And we didn't talk about O'Connell the first time we kind of touched on this, and the original conversation, the original context for this conversation, I don't know, probably an hour ago, was how many quarterbacks in the Big Ten are national championship caliber quarterbacks? And CJ Stroud is one. CJ Stroud you can win a national championship with CJ Stroud playing as your quarterback without having to have the greatest defense in history on the other side of the ball to make it happen. I would put JJ McCarthy second there. I think Aiden O'Connell is very good at what he does, but next year David Bell is not coming. David Bell is not walking David Bell in the Music City Bowl, so it's not like he has to have David Bell, but the challenge gets a little bit bigger. Aiden O'Connell is not a national championship caliber quarterback because he's on Purdue, and there's not nearly enough around him to, if you put him on another team, could he be Kenny Pickett? Could he be,
Right.
I mean, Kenny Pickett, is he a national championship caliber quarterback? Like, maybe. But Kenny Pickett was kind of in the same sort of offense as David Bell, where you've got the one of Kenny Pickett's wide receivers won the Blitnikoff Award this year, so he's got talent around him.
And we're just projecting JJ McCarthy based on tools,
a
little bit. But the thing about Aiden O'Connell for me that bothers me is he's an experienced guy, and there are just times where did that interception come from? Why did you throw that? And he threw 3 interceptions in the bowl game. Threw 3 interceptions against Wisconsin, multiple interceptions against Notre Dame and Illinois. It's just 85% of the time he's really good, but you never know when the 15% of the bad is going to happen. And if it happens at the worst possible time, now you're talking. The reliability is a concern there. In terms of the other quarterbacks, Talia Tagovailoa is still going to be around, and he's going to have good receivers. And Sean Clifford is back. It will be interesting to see if there is a quarterback battle there. I know everybody's ready to anoint Drew Aller, much like people were ready to anoint, say, Justin Zwick over Craig Krenzel in 2002. And it wasn't even over Craig Krenzel because Krenzel wasn't really a starter in 2001. But sometimes when you're just expecting these freshmen to do something, even J.J. McCarthy over Cade McNamara, which they should have done, but whatever. Michigan made the playoffs, so, good for them. And we were proven wrong. Tom was proven wrong on that one mostly.
Sue says, if Day doesn't use the run game much, why would Richard Young want to come? Richard Young, the 2023 5-star running back out of Florida, or any great back can't showcase your talents in a mainly air raid offense. And, I think that one thing you got to remember with running backs is like they want the ball. If you're the starter and you're only getting 15 carries, add that up over the course of 1 year. Now add that up over the course of 3 years, and then think about the career of a typical NFL running back. Like you want to save those hits. Don't save that damage to your body getting through college. You don't want to be a 35 carry a game back. Like you don't really see those in the college game very much anymore because it's not good for you. So if you can be a running back where you're getting the ball in space and not running the ball between the tackles, Nick Saban used to just squeeze every drop of juice out of his running backs, and it was like, and then they got to the NFL, it was like, wow, Trent Richardson's so good. Why does Trent Richardson look like he's 75 years old? That you don't want to do that to your guys, and so in some ways, not having a ton of carries is actually maybe not a bad thing in terms of running back. Super chat from Jordan Kapler. Using the current OSU offensive line, place them in the quarterback position and give a little breakdown on how they would do. Bonus points for SEC accent.
Wow, that is a lot. Of those offensive linemen, well, let's say who is the most mobile? Do you want to run a quarterback or do you want to throw a quarterback?
I was going to say you got to go with one of the tackles. That narrows it down to 4.
Yeah, but Whippler's probably the most mobile. DeJuan Jones could be like the prototypical pocket passer, stands back there, doesn't have to move much. and I can't do an SEC accent. I mean, I can, but I don't want to. Harry Miller could be a knows the offense and is your cerebral guy,
Game manager.
Oh, don't.
No, I mean that in a positive way.
There's no positive way to say game manager. That just means he doesn't have an arm. And we saw those snaps against Michigan State last year. That dude has a gun. So, sir, watch yourself. I'm going to go Paris Johnson.
Yeah. Paris Johnson, I think, is a good pick because he's athletic.
Yep.
Can move. He can move. Smart guy. That was going to be my answer. I'm just thinking through the backups. If there's anyone that really jumps out as a backup that
for quarterback.
Well, you need a backup quarterback,
right? But really, you're looking for an offensive lineman who's going to jump out at you as you try to answer this ridiculous question about projecting something like Josh Fryer. I've watched him move, and you're trying to be serious about this. Like, Tom, not everything is legends and leaders, all right? You don't have to be analytical about all of this.
So Trey LaRue, when he was in high school,
Trey LaRue, more Zen Mahalski.
Zen Mahalski is not a bad pick. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see. Mike Rogers has 6 losses for Penn State this year. That seems. I mean, I haven't gone through their schedule yet, but and I also haven't.
When you say this year, you mean next year?
No, I think he means literally this year.
2020. Did they lose 6 games this year?
They did 7-6. Yes.
See, I don't really watch Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's why you have people who are like, well, or Penn State fans are like, why are we letting Sean Clifford come back? Because you know the outcome. Now, I've seen Ben Jones, Ben Jones who covers Penn State, saying it's a lot like we're talking about with Cade McNamara, saying, yes, you know what the ceiling is with Sean Clifford, and it's not a very high ceiling, but you don't know what it is with anybody else, and it's the devil you know type of thing. And this is a program, they started out 5-0, and they finished the last 7 games or last 9 games or whatever, 8 games, just 2 wins and 6 losses. I mean, 2-6 in your last 8, as I do the math in my head, is they've had similar. Was it it was the reverse last year?
Yes, they started 0-5, I think, last year, 0-6 last year, and then won their last
0-5, yeah.
Yeah, I started 0-5, and boy, a real hot streak in the middle there.
Yeah, and that's just that. What that is, that's a sign of good coaching. When you have crazy streaks one way or the other in back-to-back years, that's just, and of course 11-2 in 2019. But yeah, they have gone kind of under the radar this year, and I think Michigan has covered over a lot of negativity about the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's not the case with Penn State fans. You see James Franklin's name being thrown around at other places, and is there some, I don't want to, not relief, but like where fans, like, you can't go, you're our coach type of thing, and then he comes back and you're like, good, we got him back? Or were there people who were like, no, go ahead? I mean, because is Penn State also being held back by James Franklin? Is it not just Sean Clifford? Is it not just the running in the offensive line? Is it James Franklin? Is Michigan being held back by Jim Harbaugh? I thought we all thought that they were, but they made the playoffs. They weren't going to win it. So are they still being held back? Probably not, because making the playoffs is about as good as Michigan can expect, because they're not a national, national championships aren't something that are it's part of their history, but not much a part of their history.
It's been a hot minute.
Yes,
is the phrase you're looking for. They, and that's you can chalk that up to how dare you, but also go back and look at the BCS standings. How many years was Michigan in the top 4 of the BCS standings? Not many. I mean, 2006. Before that, I don't know that they were. Maybe 2003 they would have been top 4, maybe. But each of those years they went and just got annihilated in the Rose Bowl by USC. So even that's this season. You're a top 4 team. You beat Ohio State, or you narrowly lose to Ohio State, and then you go play a team that's a real national power who has that 5-star talent everywhere and you get killed. That's kind of what it is. Let's do a super chat from Jalen Montgomery. Does Jack Sawyer end up transferring with JT Tuimoloau primed to take off, and guys like Kenyatta Jackson and Leonard Floyd type coming in? Where's his role? I think, Tony, I feel like we've been talking a lot about what Jack Sawyer's role is in the.
He's definitely not transferring, and you need as many defensive ends as you can have on a roster. They make each other better, and you don't want to just be the one guy. We've talked about how he could perhaps be that Leo role, that weak side defensive end in Jim Knowles' defense that can stand up, can move around, can maybe what they'll do at times is take that guy, stand him over the nose tackle, and send him in one direction or the other. Just do some different things with him, give offenses different looks, and he kind of fits that role. Cade Stover perhaps could as well, but no, he's not transferring. Like, these guys know that, and you're not going to play all of the snaps. There's benefits to not playing all of the snaps. This is something that Larry Johnson has instilled in them through recruiting, and then when they get to school, they see that, okay, this is exactly what you told us. That's some of the stuff that Ryan Day has said is, be truthful in your recruiting in terms of what your expectations are, what the players can expect. That way, when it happens, you can't say, well, we didn't tell you. Like, Jack Sawyer can't be like, I thought I was going to get 70 snaps a game, and that's Chase Young didn't get 70 snaps a game. No single Bosa got 70 snaps a game. This is just the way it is, and there's benefits to it. So no, he and JT Tuimoloau are looking very much forward to a larger role in this defense. I think everybody's looking forward to a larger role in this defense. Jack Sawyer, just true freshman, missed last year in terms of high school football, was still trying to get up enough weight, but I don't think there are any, no concerns at this point, or boy, sure is a slow starter. I think people would have liked more. But again, you can't put too much on any freshman anywhere, really.
Please do not go back and listen to our preseason shows.
No, and the midseason bold prediction, I said Jack Sawyer will lead the team from here on out in sacks. But they're bold predictions. But nobody's saying, "Oh, Jack Sawyer busts."
And I'm going to come back to Jack Sawyer in a second, but I want to thank Mike Palmer. Said got to run, but thanks for a great 2021. Not the last sentence. Everything else we do appreciate. Thank you, Mike. Thank you guys all also who have been part of these, because if you guys aren't here, it's just us talking to ourselves, and we do that a lot. So it is a lot more fun when you guys are here with us. So as to Jack Sawyer, he was someone who, I said game manager earlier with a quarterback on what was now one of the previous shows if you're listening on audio, but and as that, that's a pejorative. And Larry Johnson used the word finesse at one point this fall talking about Jack Sawyer, because Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, they're both defensive ends. It's like, oh, well, they're both edge players. It's like, well, not exactly. JT Tuimoloau is the guy you put on the tight end side because he's bigger, he's stronger, he's going to fight through blocks. Jack Sawyer is a fast dude, very athletic, but he's not built like JT Tuimoloau is right now. And, he could potentially, bulk up a little bit more, but no one is having the should they slide Jack Sawyer into the 3-tech spot conversation. Like, that was something that was a conversation around Tuimoloau before he signed or before he showed up at Ohio State. That is not a conversation with having with Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer, if you want to call guys, and we're just gonna run through the list of pejoratives here. If you want to call guys tweeners, JT Tuimoloau is a tweener between the strong side defensive end and the 3-tech. And Jack Sawyer is the tweener between the weak side defensive end and maybe almost like a linebacker, hybrid type spot. Well, good news. Guess what's coming to Ohio State in 2022? A linebacker hybrid type spot, which we saw. If you were watching the Rose Bowl very carefully, you saw a couple times when they did that. There was one place where Zach Harrison, I'm looking and I'm like, what? Why is Zach Harrison playing linebacker, lined up right behind the nose tackle? They only ran it, it was like a handful of plays at the most. But that's something that you're going to start to see, because that Leo position, that kind of stand-up rush end, move him around a little bit, let him get started standing up, not necessarily have as many, set the edge, hold the edge, run game responsibility. Like, go be fast, athletic, and go make a play. Be the big, fast guys. That is really, really intriguing for Zach Harrison. If Zach Harrison comes back, Jack Sawyer, Jack Sawyer should be more excited about playing in the Ohio State defense next year, not less, just based on the fact that there may be this role that seems like custom made for him.
Yeah, it's a playmaking role, and so why wouldn't you want it? I remember I think it was the Minnesota opener when JT Tuimoloau was in the game before Jack Sawyer, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you start to realize, oh, it's because Minnesota is a heavy run team, and JT Tuimoloau is more equipped to handle that right now than Jack Sawyer. And that is how the season played out from that point on.
All right, Doug Lindsay sent us a super chat. Not even a question, just a super chat. So thank you, Doug. We appreciate that. Yeah, let's see.
Oh, geez. There's a question. Or is that
that is his question. So there it is. GERD plus or minus 10 bottles of ketchup in 2022.
Well, Tom, I am also a person where I'm not. Once the ketchup becomes a pain to get out in terms of there's not a consistent squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to get a new bottle. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of, do you get the biggest bottle, or the kind that has to fit on the where you put your gallon of milk, like that part of the fridge, because it's such a big bottle that that'll last at least a week. Or if you just get the smaller bottle. The real key is whenever you just go to a fast food place or whatever, just grab as much ketchup as you possibly can. That way, when you do run out, you've got ketchup packets. However, the danger with that, Tom, is if you don't actually get through those, you don't know when they were made. Now, some may have some dates and some numbers, but you don't know necessarily what those numbers mean. And it can get a little hinky, a little dangerous. They should be fine. But do you want to take that chance, Tom?
I've got to say, I don't think I've ever thought about ketchup going bad before.
Do you want that to happen to you? Do you want to experience that?
This feels like a purely theoretical exercise. There's a lot of vinegar and stuff in there. I don't know that ketchup can actually go bad.
It can be not as good as it was on its first day, or second day, or 370th day.
That's why I always buy fresh ketchup at the store.
That's why I make my own.
Exactly. Yes. Ketchup guru GERD. Write that down for your off season. Cooking with GERD. How to make your own ketchup.
Tomatoes.
Hummus Hero says maybe Sawyer shouldn't bulk up and should just play middle linebacker. Think Andy Katzenmoyer. I think he's a little big for that. He might be a little bit.
Well, by the time Andy Katzenmoyer was a sophomore and junior, he was pushing 260 pounds, but he was too big to do that. He was
too big, yeah.
And it showed in his play. But no, the most I could see from him is being a Sam like a Cade Stover. Mm-hmm. But the reason they moved Cade Stover to defensive end is because he was going to eventually be too big for linebacker. And is Jack Sawyer a 3-4 outside linebacker at the next level? Probably. But he's also a guy who can eventually be 265 pounds, and then he's fine. So middle linebacker, that's an issue for Ohio State that is probably an entirely separate conversation. Is it Simon? Is it Tommy Eichenberg? Where is Mitchell Melton in all of this? Mm-hmm. Steel Chambers kind of, I don't want to say he disappeared over the last half of the season. And again, he's a will linebacker, but there are still some major questions because Tommy Eichenberg finished very strongly, got better as the season went on. I know a lot of people are only going to see the bad from him, and it's going to be hard for them to give up on their tough Borland comparisons. But the dude was pretty good in this Rose Bowl, and will be better next year. But there's going to be a lot yet to do because it was Cody Simon who started almost all year long, but it was Tommy Eichenberg who kind of got his minutes as the season went on. But Cody Simon was injured.
Right.
So is a healthy Cody Simon better than a healthy Tommy Eichenberg? The coaches think so, but we haven't seen. There was never one moment this season where you're like, whoa, Cody Simon. Like, this dude is going to be good. And, that's probably not unexpected if you have a bad shoulder all year long and you're a linebacker and he doesn't wow you and you're like, you can't expect to be blown away by somebody playing injured in the most physical sport there is outside of soccer.
There it is. The 2022. Yeah, I think that's an important you raised there about Cody Steinman, where there are going to be people who write him off as this guy's terrible. I just saw it for a whole year. He's a bum. If you're playing hurt, sometimes you're going to not look you're going to not look fantastic. It's like what do these coaches see in this guy? Well, he might look different when he's healthy, and they've seen him healthy. You haven't seen him healthy, so. Mitchell Melton is another name that's like, where does he fit in this defense? Because he's just been out all year. There's a lot of guys who have been out, from so early in camp. Tyler Friday, I think people have completely forgotten that Tyler Friday's on the team. You have all of these guys, and I'm going to be so interested to see how they fit these guys all together and who slots in where, because there's a lot of question about who's coming back. Anyone who's not a guaranteed starter is people are going to wonder, are they going to transfer? And there's just so many questions that are going to get sorted out kind of over the next week or next month, let's say, and then you go into spring ball. And then a bunch more questions are going to get sorted out then. And then you're probably going to have another little shuffle on the roster after spring ball, as you kind of always do. So, yeah, it is going to be the roster flux in college football has turned this into more of a year-round sport. It's like people talk about the NBA offseason being more entertaining than the NBA season. Like, you're not going to quite there with college football, but it is turning into much more of a year-round sport than it used to be.
You've got 2 signing days. Mm-hmm. You've got the transfer portal after the season. You've got the transfer portal after spring. It's the only time there is no college football is, I don't know, July. Mm-hmm. And that's when coaches are on vacation.
That's when media day is.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Yeah. I generally plan on taking my family vacation the week after the 4th of July because it's like, well, things are about to get real with football, so we'll go hang out for a week, and then I'll see you guys in January. From Bucknut0730, thank you for your super chat. Who leads in touchdowns in 2022, Harrison Jr. or Jackson Smith-Njigba? I'm assuming this is only wide receivers.
Yeah, because you look at what Jackson Smith-Njigba did this season. One thing he did not do was catch a lot of touchdowns. Mm-hmm. 9 is a lot, but compared to Chris Olave's 13 in 12 games, compared to Garrett Wilson's 12 and 11 games, this is a situation where if Jackson Smith-Njigba stays in the slot, and I think you're crazy to move him, that's just my opinion. I think he stays there, and Emeka Egbuka can play somewhere else. However, Tom, I know you're going to say, but imagine Emeka Egbuka in the slot, and that's a convincing argument. I'm going to agree with you there. It's just like with the whole slot thing, it's like you're putting somebody in the absolute best position to succeed, and it's like, don't you want as many people in that role as you can slide in there? And then you look at what Emeka Egbuka can do, and you're like, oh, yeah, I agree. Like Garrett Wilson, I agree. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I agree. Emeka Egbuka, sure, I agree. But to answer the question, am I going to be shocked if Marvin Harrison has more touchdown catches than Jackson Smith-Njigba next year? Absolutely not. And that's with Jackson Smith-Njigba possibly having 40 more catches than Marvin Harrison last year, because next year, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the kind of guy that, you know how there are some running backs who are goal line backs, like this is your touchdown vulture.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Marvin Harrison Jr. can be a touchdown vulture inside the red zone, and just very, very simple, big target, wide range, as opposed to Jackson Smith-Njigba, you have to go right on the numbers for him to catch the ball.
Yeah, Jackson Smith-Njigba, famously small catch radius. Yes. I think it may be instructive that they had the same number of touchdowns in the Rose Bowl, despite the fact that Jackson Smith-Njigba had like 2.5 times as many receptions. Jackson Smith-Njigba, when he scored touchdowns, they were
52 yards,
52 and yards. 50 and 30 or something like that. And Marvin Harrison was a little bit more of a red zone touchdown threat. That I think you're probably gonna see Jackson Smith-Njigba with double the receptions, double the receiving yards and not as many touchdowns.
Yeah, it's crazy. Tom, did you happen to see my tweet about Jackson Smith-Njigba's last 5 games?
No, I have you blocked.
I know. That's why I was mainly saying that for everybody watching and listening. Over the last 5 games, 60 catches, I believe 958 yards.
It's a good season. How many games was that?
That was 5 games, and it was good for the 11th most receiving yards in Ohio State history. It would be top 10, Tom, if not for Jackson Smith-Njigba's 1,606 yards receiving this year. Just the last 5 games would have put him in the top 10. That dude is ridiculous. And we haven't said that enough on this show because we spent an hour saying it on yesterday's show. That guy is absolutely legit. And I'm glad we were saying it from day one of spring of 2020.
Yeah,
Look at us.
Yeah, go back and listen to the show from right. It was literally the show right before the world blew up. Yeah. We got to watch one spring practice in 2020 before everything shut down. And my takeaway from that was, boy, I hope nothing else changes because this is going to be an amazing year because that Jackson Smith-Njigba is incredible. That was actually the same practice where Master Teague blew out his Achilles. That was an eventful practice.
I think your exact words were, if the world ends today, I've seen enough. Jackson Smith-Njigba is the greatest of all time.
It was along those lines.
It was an awesome performance.
It was yeah.
No other way to put it. It was every bit as good as anything we had ever seen Garrett Wilson do in a game or in practice. And it was just one practice of spring.
A true freshman during spring. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Shane Cupp, thank you for your super chat. What was going on with the clock management on the final drive? Why the timeout at 12 seconds and not at 1 second? And I have, on the post-game show, someone messaged it was actually an injury timeout, and I have found absolutely nothing to substantiate that. We were down on the field, no one saw an injury. It is credited in the box score as a timeout Ohio State. Yeah. I swear I remember the PA guy saying timeout Ohio State or the ref saying timeout Ohio State.
There was a photographer, Dan Harker, about this, and he said, "No, I saw Ryan Day calling a timeout, like yelling for a timeout on that one."
And I was not in the post-game press conference with Day. We were off talking to individual players outside the locker room, but supposedly Day said that his plan was to throw the ball in the end zone at least once, and then if that didn't work, then you go and kick the field goal after that. But you give C.J. Stroud a chance to throw it in the end zone, and you just basically say, if this guy is not wide open, throw it into the stands, and just trust C.J. Stroud to make a good decision. And your offensive line hasn't given up a sack all day, so you trust your offensive line to pass pro. But that was just, it was like there were 10 different ways you could play that situation, and that was not anywhere on my bingo card. You could, because the previous play ended with 27 seconds or something like that, and Ohio State had one timeout left. It's like you could rush to the line because that was only first down. You could have rushed to the line and spiked it, and then you could have, then you've got third down where you could run the ball or throw the ball, and then you kick a field goal on fourth down. That would have been a perfectly viable solution. But that's not what they did, and he said he got talked out of it. So then you've left yourself in a spot where, okay, now there's 9 seconds left, and you've got to kick it to the guy who ran it back for a touchdown, and you've got a 3-point lead with 9 seconds left in the game. What could possibly go wrong? And then they kicked it to him. We watched the abridged on TV on Sunday morning, and Kirk Herbstreit goes, "Well, they're not going to kick it to him." They kicked it to him. It was like, I don't know that's how I would have played that. I asked Noah Ruggles about it after the game, and I said, "Did you guys talk about, maybe you squib it, maybe you try, maybe you do the line drive straight into the front line guy's face mask and recover the onside? I mean, you get a million different things. Kick it out of bounds. Like, what do how many different ways do you want to try and play this?" And he said, "Well, they made the decision to do a sky kick, just kick it real high and short and just try and get coverage around." And to their credit, it worked. That worked fine. I was behind the end zone, behind Britton Covey as he's running, and all the pictures that I have of that sequence, there are 3 Buckeyes around him. It's just like, remember the game? It was a game where you were Mr. X and you're playing in London, Scotland Yard. Do you remember the game Scotland Yard? Okay, well, it's a game where you're the bad guy and you're moving around London and the detectives are trying to catch you, and like you just get like hemmed in, and it's like I can't go left, I can't go right. That was what it reminded me of. You're like stuck there, and you there's nowhere to go. They had him hemmed in real well. Did you see who made the tackle on that play?
I did, but I've forgotten since.
Yeah, I mean, Emeka Egbuka's down there. I think someone else is down there. Another starter was down there. And Chris Booker, former OSU club football team, walk-on wide receiver Chris Booker made the
Demario was down there.
Made the game-clinching tackle. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was it was not a great moment in game management, I would say, handling it that way. It all worked out, and I feel like we constantly have the process versus result conversation on the show, but it was. I think if Ryan Day had to do it all over again, that's probably not what he would have done. And that is to his credit, because I think if you ask James, if like James Franklin did something nutso like that, I think if you ask James Franklin, he could, I'd do it all again.
Well, I think there could be also two factors coming into play here, and I mentioned one of them in the instant reaction show: running out of time in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And Day didn't want to have anything like that happen because you feel like you're an idiot. I'm not saying he's an idiot. I mean, internally, you feel like an idiot, like you've wasted this. Mm-hmm. Second thing is CJ Stroud threw an interception in the end zone in that game.
He did.
So you've got those two things. Like, you trust CJ Stroud implicitly. However, you already saw him throw an interception. Do you really want to take that chance again? And once you start weighing that, the cost benefit analysis, Tom, of that, you're like, you know what? It's 12 seconds. Let's just kick it and go from there. Now, should they have, but, maybe as he's analyzing it with the 12 seconds, he's like, you know what? I don't want to throw it. I don't want to do anything else. Don't want to take a sack.
Yeah.
Anything bad can happen right now. Let's take the lead. We have this opportunity. And if they return a kickoff against us, then that's Britton Covey had returned 5 kickoffs all season before this game. So I don't think there's any concern about him. I was looking for the quote, Tom, about that, and I couldn't find it. However, I did find this funny one. It's the first question to him. And it's, Ryan, I know you said that you were telling Jackson don't try to do too much, and they cut him off and said he didn't listen. So that's pretty good on Day's part, and he's absolutely correct. And now, again, as I said last night, or whenever you're listening to this, I said after the game, make that guy run stairs because he did fumble into the end zone.
That's true. Stephen Piper points out the board game New York Chase, which is the poor man's Scotland Yard. Yes, the key difference in board game household. So I have both of those board games in the closet at my home right at this moment. In Scotland Yard, you could take a boat along the River Thames, but in Scotland Yard, or in New York Chase, you had access to a helicopter.
Oh, really?
Makes me kind of want to be a villain. I want a helicopter.
I think you're very much a villain, just so you know.
Thank you. Treebuck, thank you for your super chat. Sorry if this has already been mentioned, but the video of DeMario at the end of the game was very touching. Thanks, Tony. Let people know what you.
And you can check that out on YouTube. That was immediately after the game. I just shooting the missed field goal, or the kickoff return, and then just watching everybody go out onto the field. And everybody is celebrating, and DeMario McCall is near the area of the kickoff return, and he's just standing by himself, looking up into the stands, just looking up at just soaking it all in. And he was there for 30 seconds, just taking it all in. This is his last game. And, so I'm just shooting, and you look around for stuff to see, to shoot, and you see him, and so I focused on him a little bit, and he's just, looking, just staring, and then starts to nod and this is it. And I think Tyleek Williams came up to him after that, and it's a guy who has been at Ohio State since 2016. Think of everything that has gone on in his 6 years.
He was the receiver for Joe Burrow's first college touchdown pass. That's it. That's the tweet. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he's been through a lot. Not a single time in his career, not a single year did things go as planned. So I tweeted out a picture of that, and you've got Johnny Dixon saying never a better teammate. You got Tony Alford saying no better example of being a Buckeye. And, he's a guy that the fans always really liked until he had a muffed kickoff against Michigan, but always wanted to see more of. And this is a guy who this year is like, I will play corner. After 5 years of being moved around between running back and wide receiver, never having a place, and then coming in and is like, where do you need me? I'll do it. I just really love being a Buckeye. And that's something he said before the season. He's like, it would be very difficult to leave. It is very difficult to leave the brotherhood, and quitting was the easy way out. And nothing about his 6 years at Ohio State was you would call easy, except for maybe his freshman year, when he was like the backup running back who got to carry the ball after the blowouts were already in session. And I think he had 49 carries as a true freshman, and then never had 49 more carries the rest of his career at Ohio State, or 49 more touches. And this is a guy running back, H-back, then there is no more H-back, and it's just slot, and never ever had a home, but the entire time Ohio State was his home.
Yeah, it was there was always stuff with him, like every once in a while you'd have this off the field, like, what are you doing, DeMario? Come on, like, but he is one of those incredibly beloved teammates, and there's a real disconnect between the level of production on the field, what they got out of him, and like how beloved he is. Like normally, if the guy doesn't produce on the field, fans want to tell you that he's a bust and he's terrible, and and that was just never the case with DeMario. And it came out after the game that he was the one. Ryan Day at halftime basically told the team, like, you guys sort it out. Just he put it on them. Like, you guys, this is your decision how you want to play the second half, and not like schematically, but like you're down 14 points. I'm sure this was not his exact speech, but this is how I contextualize it in my head.
Can you do it with his
you're down
North New Hampshire accent?
Ironically, Northeast accent. I mean, I could do a Boston, but that's not really the same. Anyway,
do it Australian.
Anyway, so basically, you've lost the Michigan game. You didn't get your main goals for the season are out of reach. You're down 14 points. Would you like to quit, or would you like to keep playing? That felt like a very turning point moment culturally for the program, because there are, we want to talk about Northeast. That is the point at which two roads diverged. Robert Frost from the Northeast. Anyway, and they chose
the Grapes of Wrath. I'm joking with you. I know that's out west.
The road less taken. Anyway,
less traveled.
Shut up. Anyway, the point is that who was the person that stepped up? Ryan Day basically put it on the players. And who was the player who stepped up on the defensive side of the ball? It's DeMario McCall. And I think Bryson Charles, the person who was asked about it, and he said, like, so what did he say? And he goes, you're going to leave that in the locker room. But before that, he had said, you know how DeMario is. And it's like, so we probably couldn't report this.
The irony, the real irony is Ryan Day streamed it from his IG account.
I have nothing to add that is either relevant or true. There were a lot of people complimenting you in your videos, on your DeMario McCall video. I thought personally it was your best work since the Isaiah Prince photo after the Penn State game in 2017.
Man, that was a good one. I took that Isaiah Prince and Jamarco Jones picture. That was.
If you got that, you've been a podcast listener for a long.
We haven't brought that one out in a while.
No. We also haven't brought out the legendary DeMario McCall Rutgers story, where we were at the Rutgers game and I was out in the stands. It was like, it's 9 million to 3 or it was 9 million to nothing, because they kicked the field goal at the end of the game and clanged it to try and get on the board. I think that game ended up 49-0, but it's the second half. 58-0.
As a freshman, 2016,
yes.
Right?
No, 17. And the stands, and it's like, well, it's cold, but like, well, maybe I'll get a good video to post on Twitter or something. And I was messing with my phone for something, and I missed DeMario McCall go 50 yards for a touchdown. I was like, well, that was stupid. Won't do that again. And they get the ball again, and they're nowhere near the red zone, so I'm messing with the phone or tweeting something. And 2 touchdowns in that game, and I managed to miss both of them, even though I was sitting in the stands specifically to shoot video of him. So that was Tony, it was so long ago I wasn't good at my job. That's how long like the Joe Burrow stat is fine, but that is how long ago it was.
Seems just like yesterday. But he had a 35-yard touchdown catch, 11 rushes for 103 yards against Rutgers. The year before, 10 for 85 against Rutgers. And did he have any catches? No. But, so yeah, 49 rush attempts as a true freshman. Do you know how many more he had the rest of his career, Tom?
I will think about it while I also point out that maybe he just had a real vendetta against Chris Ash, because it really sounds like he feels like he headed out for that guy. 49 rush attempts as a freshman. I'm going to say, boy, he didn't have many. I'm going to say 20.
41.
Oh.
So you were way off. Boy, you really took that question down the road. That wasn't nearly as entertaining as we thought it would be.
Yeah, see, Treebuck says the sad photos of the Cannon team, what I remember from that game. Well, that's pretty much the Rutgers game. If you don't get the sad photos of the Cannon team, what are we even doing here? We're pushing 2.5 hours.
Well, we said we would, or at least internally. How much longer do you want to go, Tom?
Well, that's.
Is it up to them? Well, as we say that.
All right. So Bucknut 0730. Any other rumbling on coaching changes coming? We've talked about that a little bit. I think the short answer is we don't expect this to be a one-off change. Tony, you want to share what you heard about?
Yeah, I told Kerry Combs after the game was asking to have pictures taken with Tony Alford and Mickey Marotti and other guys on the staff. With the way it was presented, looked like he was just wanting some pictures because this was going to be the last time they were all together. So, and when I say they were all together, that I mean Kerry Combs was with them for the last time. Perhaps that's just the image presented from what I heard and what I was told, and I don't know that means he's done. It's just when you are at situations like this, and you're asked to take pictures of people because this is the last time they're acting like this is the last time they're going to be together. Then maybe read a little into that, like Matt Barnes was with Cam Brown, and they spent a long time together, hugging and talking and stuff like that. And you put the two and two together. That one, the math was already out there, and so that one made sense. But yeah, that's what a lot of these games are. You look around and see, is anybody more emotional than they should be? Urban Meyer, Shelley Meyer in 2018 after the Michigan game, where that one, you see that and you're like, I wonder if this is the last time Urban Meyer is going to coach in the Michigan game, because it sure seems like they're acting like it is much more different than any other previous game.
Yeah, and I was down on the field shooting pictures, and Cam Brown asked me to shoot a picture of him with Kerry Combs, with other folks, and sometimes guys just want pictures. I mean, Trivian Henderson asked me to get a picture with him with someone else in the field. I got a picture of Jesse Mirko and another Pro Kick Australia people. Like, sometimes guys just want a shot, and it's like, hey, get a picture with me and the rose in my mouth or whatever. But that's a you can read into that as much as you want to. I keep saying I think 3 to 4 coaching changes is probably my expectation, and we'll see how that shakes out in the coming days. And that could be, I've seen a ton of people in the chat asking, well, why weren't they supposed to announce all this stuff Sunday? The logistics of this from the Ohio State side is the airplane left last night from LA at, I'm going to guess their plane had to leave 8.
No.
So you're getting home with the time change at 5 a.m. or something, 6 a.m., drive home from the airport. You're not. Yeah, it is a dead day, and so they're going to, and it's a Sunday, and everyone who covers a team is in Los Angeles or flying back from Los Angeles or whatever. So logistically, this would not be a day that you'd announce any of that kind of stuff, and you'd certainly not hold a press conference. And they may, I think early to midweek would be my guess as to when you're going to start, and stuff will start leaking.
Yeah.
People on our staff are kind of hearing things, and some of it matches and some of it doesn't, and you're kind of doing some detective work. And there's we're going to do a little journalism 101. Ready? You can hear stuff from a source, and the source can tell you, here's what I'm hearing, or this is what's happening, but you don't report that until you have that from someone else. Because I, during the course of New Year's Day, heard from one person who said, I'm hearing this coach is going to be invited to stay. And then like partway through the game, I heard, actually, I think maybe not going to stay. And I put that in our group chat just because we try and keep each other apprised of what we're hearing. And it was like, the game going that badly? It's like, well, so I mean, you will get conflicting information at times. And the whole point is, when we tell you something, we want to be right. We want to be sure that we're right. We want to have it nailed before we report it. So you're not, this will sort itself out. It will probably start to trickle out, start to leak before there's an official announcement, which is typically how this happens. But that's a ballpark on what sort of to expect, I think.
Yeah, I remember last year I had a source, one of my good sources, telling me something, and then like 2 days later asking me about it. I'm like, but like asking me what I had heard. I'm like, but I rely on you to tell me this part.
Just read back what you said.
This is not how this is not how it works. You tell me something, and then I know it. You can't say, hey, what are you hearing? You are the source. It's like if Wikipedia like knocks on my door, is like, hey, can you tell us the last 40 Heisman winners? I'm like, no, that's what I go to you for.
Every conversation with you is just citation missing.
Yes, exactly.
Our good buddy Jim Davidson. Hello, Jim. Thanks for helping me pass the time in the hospital. I really enjoy your chats, Jim. We were thinking about you last night. We appreciate you being a part of these. Jim, if you don't know, is a photographer for the Ozone. We worked with Jim for years at the Ozone, and do you remember the really iconic photo of Jim Tressel from the post game of the 2002 Miami National Championship game, where he's got like the biggest smile on his face, and it's like a cartoonishly huge smile. It's like, hey, that was Jim's photo. I thought of that after the Rose Bowl, and I brought that up on the post-game show for the Rose Bowl show, because I have a picture of Ryan Day making like 75% of that face.
The Tressel O face?
Yeah. He was never really known for his O. He was more of a defense guy.
It's 2.5 hours, I'm sorry.
Anyway, so yeah, I brought that up on the show last night, and Jim tweeted at me, and we were tweeting back and forth a little bit. So hope you're glad to have you here, and we'll keep you in our thoughts. Let's see. Treasure the Tour wants to know, where's Kevin?
Who?
Yeah, this is a new generation. This is
It's a new year.
I mean, I only have one source on where Kevin is, so I'm not sure I can tell you. But no, Kevin is on his way to the All-American game in San Antonio right now. He'll be covering that along with Mark Givler at BuckeyeScoop.com. So he has left one day earlier than we are when we're flying out. So Mindy Van Sickle, is there anybody in the portal who Ohio State might target? And we have talked a little bit about, I guess maybe we can start with a positional conversation before we get into a specific people conversation. Because I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about a couple of safeties who they might look at, but I mean, they have expressed an interest in a tight end. They were trying to get the Austin Stogner from Oklahoma. He ended up going to South Carolina along with Spencer Rattler. So, but they have expressed an interest in a tight end. I think they would like a big-bodied kind of tight end there. I think, if a defensive tackle fell in their lap, I don't think they would be devastated by that.
They were even looking at Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back. Yep. So were they just looking at him, or were they looking at if you can find a productive starting middle linebacker, I mean, I think there's a number of areas they can be improved just about everywhere, because it goes back to our conversation a while ago on this show. Who among the defense is championship caliber? And if the answer is only one or two guys, then if somebody is out there who is championship caliber, then that would be a step up. Now, you're still going to be looking at remember what you're choosing from.
Right.
You know, these are it's not like necessarily a swap meet, but you're not necessarily buying the best kind of goods. You know, you're buying something that here's my and again, all due respect. Like, here's my used pizza cutter. If you would like it, that's some of that. And so you run down the list, and I'm looking here, you know, plenty of former 4 stars, plenty of former 3 stars, but you're looking for somebody who has been productive and are you looking for the 3-star, the group of 5 starter who is ready for that jump up? Because I think that's where you can get the best bang for your buck, rather than the guy who never got a shot at Power 5 and is looking for a chance to start. And it's like, how do you know they can play at Ohio State?
Right. Well, there's several different classes of player in the portal. There is, you know, the one you just mentioned, which is the guy who slid through fell through the cracks, ended up at a MAC school, and is now super fantastic. And it's like, oh, hey, if Khalil Mack was playing college football right now, would he finish his career at Buffalo? Probably not. He's probably going to, he plays 2 seasons at Buffalo, and then he plays another year at Clemson or Alabama or Ohio State, and then he turns pro. There's that group, and there, you have seen some guys in that class this year. The tackle from Florida Atlantic, who Ohio State was interested in, he went to there's a 5-star quarterback named Quinn. He totally clicked off the page. There's a 5-star quarterback named Quinn something. I'm not sure whatever happened to him. But you have the kid from Florida Atlantic who's in the tackle. He went to Miles Frazier. He went from Florida International to LSU. That's a done deal. They had been interested in him, but they didn't get him. So that's one class of player. You have also the Paula Ieno, Teote kind of guys, where he was someone Ohio State was very close to getting coming out of high school. 5-star linebacker, went to USC, was an immediate impact guy there, but then couldn't stay healthy. So he was just kind of like a change of scenery person and came to Ohio State and contributed this year, but was not a difference maker. And he may just, that may or may not be just the injuries have kind of caught up with him to the point where he's not going to be that dude that it looked like he might be. And then you have the Power 5, team, that highly ranked guy that hasn't panned out and goes somewhere else. And, Tyreek Johnson for Ohio State is a great example of this. Cornerback, he was a 5-star corner in the class of 2018, and then just never got on the field at Ohio State. And it was like, they would try, it felt like, oh, we're going to try him at safety. And no, that didn't work. And you're going to try him in the corner. Like, no, that didn't work. What about the slot? No, that didn't work. So, and then he goes to Nebraska. Nebraska's all excited. They got a 5-star cornerback from Ohio State, and this is going to be incredible. And then he played, I think, in 2 games. One of them was just on special teams, and one of them was against, I think they played Fordham non-conference, and it was like he played in the Fordham game, and that was it. Just, but wasn't just like hasn't developed at the college level the way you thought. But, you also have the class of the guy who is, stuck on the depth chart at the highly ranked school and goes somewhere else. You saw that very famously this year with Ryan Jacoby, the offensive tackle who went to Pitt and started in Pitt's bowl game as an offensive lineman. You also, in a much lesser hyped move, Jamison Williams went from Ohio State to Alabama, and I don't know. I guess I assume it went well. I don't know.
I want to talk about the Jamison Williams real quick, because somebody asked on the Ask the Insiders board, is Julian Fleming just a possession receiver? And his kind of catches were pretty much the exact same kind of catches that Jamison Williams made at Ohio State. So I'm going to say, no, he's not a possession receiver. That's just the way they've been used. And can you say Jamison Williams was used improperly at Ohio State? I mean, probably not used enough, but we also said it at the time, like, just get him more involved. That's a very that's a tangent of another day, but yeah, another guy that was a boon. That was maybe if there's Tom, I know you love Mount Rushmores, the Mount Rushmore of the transfer portal. You've got Justin Fields, Joe Burrow, Jameson Williams. I don't know who the Teddy Roosevelt is, but I think those three guys are. I mean,
yeah, I mean that's and I mean, ironically, those are
some Heisman winners.
Yeah, those are the three Ohio State related transfers too. I mean, which is a weird coincidence. Two out, one in. That's you will have guys who are all conference players who you're trying to transfer up. I mean, the Henry To'o types, where he was at Tennessee, was very clearly the best player in Tennessee's defense. It was like, well, upon further consideration, I'm playing for Tennessee. So what if there was somewhere better than Tennessee? And
there is.
It turns out there is. And then he went to play for Alabama. And that has worked out, I think, pretty well. He's been, I think Alabama fans were not real keen on him at the beginning of the year, and then he has turned into a pretty good player for them. So, there are, Holy Sal says, I see Fleming transferring. There are already rumors about it a month ago. And,
there's been rumors about it long before that.
There were rumors he was going to decommit, because his girlfriend ran track at Penn State when he was in high school. I think it's natural when someone comes in and it's the number one player in the nation in his position to go, well, if he's not playing immediately, he's going to transfer. But he hasn't been playing for off-field reasons, like health, not he's in trouble reasons, but health reasons. He can't stay healthy. He's been getting hurt. So now he's going into the offseason as a guy who just started the Rose Bowl. And I think they were very happy with him, see whether he grades as a champion and all that. But the coaches have given you a very big, thumbs up and a vote of confidence there. I would be very surprised if he transferred before spring. Now, if spring comes and he leaves spring as the fourth wide receiver or fifth wide receiver in the depth chart, then okay, then maybe we can have that conversation. But I think just that Rose Bowl alone, the opportunity, the fact they're not going to put him out there just to sort of pat him on the head and say, oh, look at you. What a big boy. You're starting in the Rose Bowl. They put him out there because they felt he was the guy who gave them the best chance to win that game. So that in and of itself, I think, makes me not expect him to transfer, at least in the short term.
Now feels like the worst time to transfer if you're Julian Fleming, because you have those two guys gone. However, Jameson Williams transferred because he was going to be the fourth guy. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like it comes down to Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka as to who the fourth guy will be. And really, I think Ohio State just needs to be more committed to playing four guys. And we've talked in the past about six guys. Just worry about the four. Keep four happy. Do what you can to keep Jameson Williams from happening again. Mm-hmm. And that Jameson Williams thing was building because he was not used in almost any way the way he was in Alabama. He was a decoy more often than not. And sure, Ohio State had some really good receivers, but it turns out Jameson Williams also a really good receiver. And I'm not saying what Ohio State got instead of Jameson Williams this year was Jackson Smith-Njigba. So I don't think this is the Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins thing. Mm-hmm. But if you can keep them both, that is the much better option. So find a way to keep them both. Mm-hmm. And if Julian Fleming were to transfer, it feels like that would just be. I'd rather be somewhere else. Mm-hmm. It's not working for me here. It's not about I'm not going to get the ball or I don't have any opportunities, because I think the opportunities are going to be there next year.
Yeah, and on the other side of this coin is there are positions where a transfer out would be far more devastating than at wide receiver. I mean, wide receiver, you've got your three other guys. You got we'll take Fleming off the roster, but you can sub in really anyone here for this conversation. You would still have Egbuka, Harrison, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. You would still have Jaden Ballard from this year's class. You would have four wide receivers who are coming in. They were all kind of top 100 wide receivers, and they may not all hit, but based on Brian Hartline's track record, I'm going to bet that two of them turn into really good starting players for Ohio State, and then the third one is at least a pretty good contributor. Not even going to guess which one, because it's just it's like how it used to be when Ohio State was really rolling at cornerback. It was like, whoa, who's going to be the guy who is the third-year player who comes in at corner this year and takes off and is a first-round draft pick next year, where it's just like an assembly line. That's what Ohio State's wide receivers are right now. So, wide receiver is not the position where they are most concerned, but I can tell you as a statement of fact, Ohio State very much does not want Julian Fleming to transfer, because Ohio State thinks Julian Fleming is, you hear people talk constantly, but just the incredibly freaky athletic stuff that he does in practice. And the thing that I think makes me know for a fact that they like him more than anything else is how well he blocked in the Rose Bowl. Like that, rewatching the game, it was like there was I think it was one of Jackson Smith-Njigba's long touchdowns on the left sideline.
Catch and run.
Yeah, catch and run. And Julian Fleming had it was like a Terry McLaurin block. It was like I think he might have taken out two guys. It was just like that's the stuff. I mean, like,
and it was a smart block.
It wasn't. He didn't get.
It wasn't getting a flag.
Yeah. Yep. But it's like that's the stuff that, man, you want to make Brian Hartline love you, like block like that downfield. And also he's a really, he's a good receiver who can do stuff that normal human beings cannot do.
Yeah.
So there were Freddie Z says that safety from Northwestern to be a good get, sophomore All-American. He's someone that we brought up earlier. There's him. Jim Knowles has a safety from Oklahoma State who's in the portal right now. And, is that someone who would be, that is one of the interesting ways teams use the portal. Like you look at Western Kentucky this year, they brought in the offensive coordinator from, it's the school that has the CVS, like their stadium has like a CVS, like right next door, like the parking lot of a CVS pharmacy is right next door. It's Houston Baptist, I think. They
is
brought
that
in
like a selling point?
Well, I mean, it's one of the more notable features. Pull up Houston Baptist home field on your on Google Earth and see if I'm not right. They brought in the offensive coordinator from this school. I'm pretty sure it's Houston Baptist, and then they also brought in his quarterback and his wide receivers. It was like a quarterback, maybe two receivers, might have been a running back, maybe. It was. Tony is Googling. Tony just Googled Houston Baptist CVS and put it on maps. Guess what? He's getting CVS pharmacies around.
What does this have to do with Houston Baptist?
Anyway,
honestly.
Anyway, so yeah, but they brought in the offensive coordinator, they brought in the quarterback, they brought in multiple wide receivers, and then you've got guys who know how to run the system. The quarterback and the wide receivers already have chemistry, and guess what? Western Kentucky had a crazy cuckoo bananas year this year on offense. They put up ridiculous numbers, and I think that you may see that as a little bit of a model moving forward, and that's not unheard of for coaches to kind of take a couple guys with them. Lance Leipold, I think, took some Buffalo players with him to Kansas when he moved. Shane Beamer did not come. He came from Oklahoma at one point, and so it is not a coincidence. And Austin Stogner and Spencer Rattler came with him there. So yeah, it is that is definitely a way that people use the portal, and that's something that those two. I'll find it.
No. I'm looking. This is Houston Baptist University. There are 14 pharmacies around here. Now this is CVS. That's a CVS. There's another CVS. But I think is this a pharmacy school?
Yeah, apparently.
But anyway, so enough Houston Baptist CVS stuff. Tom, we've got a serious show to do here. I had in this rundown. I don't know if I'm ready to do this yet. Tom, let's predict the starters on defense for the Notre Dame game.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna go. Let's assume Zach Harrison is back. You can assume. You don't have to assume.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you want. Boy, this is impossible because I don't know what
Correct.
the Leo is. I don't know who the weak side is. Is that Zach Harrison? It's not JT Tuimoloau. I expect JT Tuimoloau to start. I expect Jerron Gage is the nose tackle. Tyleik Williams is the 3 tech. Is Zach Harrison the Leo? I don't know. Maybe we just send him to the NFL so that we can take that out of the equation. Middle linebacker, Thomas, I don't know. Is it Tommy Eichenberg? Is it Cody Diamond? Let's just assume it's Steel Chambers. But again, Steel Chambers needs to play better than he did. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a brand new defensive coordinator. He's going to see everything that Steel Chambers did, and he's probably going to wonder, like, why weren't things – he will look to see why weren't things as productive over the second half of the season. was that a product of the offenses maybe catching up with what he did? There is no way to do this, Tom. I'm thinking safeties.
It's impossible. There are too many things that we don't know.
Burke
right.
is the only starter.
I feel very good about that. Yeah.
And really, I'll say Jerron Cage, and I think JT Tuimoloau. Like, are those the like, who are you most sure is starting? Because even Ronnie Hickman is a question, because you've got the Court Williams thing. You've got, is there a transfer safety? Like, there's, for me, I think JT Tuimoloau is going to be one of my top three. I feel safest about that projection. Other than that, I don't know if I can go confidently to a fourth defensive guy.
I'm with you. There's too many variables there. Which number one, different scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, we don't know who's leaving for the NFL. Number three, we don't know who's potentially transferring out. Number four, we don't know who's potentially transferring in. There's just so many. And yes, I don't know if you can see this, dear listener. Stadium, and right there, that's a CVS pharmacy. Houston Baptist. Nobody knows more unimportant college football garbage than me.
You sure? Was that like part of the EA Sports game? Like when they show the stadium, you see the CVS?
I don't think Houston Baptist was ever part of the.
Oh, that's right. Tom, we are right at about 3 hours of this show.
Let's do 10 more minutes.
Okay.
I know you're looking for an excuse to stop interacting with.
I'm letting you know because I know numbers.
Yeah, I know. No,
so,
we're good. We're good. We're going to do like 10 more minutes. So Adam Baker wants to know date of the spring game. That is not anything official yet. Here is how I generally view the spring game, spring football schedule. Usually it's the third weekend of April. So, whatever the first weekend of April is, that starts with a 1, the date. I would guess, and this is, please do not book a hotel or book a flight based on me saying this, because we won't know the actual answer until probably late February or so. That's generally when they tell us.
April 16th.
April 16th is my guess. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
April 16th is my guess. And then you kind of backdate it 8th, maybe something like that.
Here's the thing though. Because I went and actually looked at when Ohio State spring break was. It's usually the week before spring break.
Yes.
You got 2 practices. Could be a Monday, Wednesday. Could be a Tuesday, Thursday. So I think if I can bring up the actual calendar here, let me bring up the OSU academic calendar.
Yeah, but that's generally the formula is the spring practice will start the week before Ohio State goes on spring break, and they get a couple practices and they go on spring break, and then they come back and kind of do it for real. And then it usually works out to.
So it looks like spring break is the 14th through the 18th. So that would put the first practice
on
the
March 8th.
7th or 8th.
Yeah. See how I did that?
Yep.
Didn't even have to look it up. It's like magic. It's like we've been doing this a while.
Well, and that's if Ohio State actually chooses to practice before spring break. This year, they chose to do it after to give more time. So I would expect them to try to get back to the normal operating. And so, somewhere in the first.
But we generally don't get an actual calendar on that until sometime in February. It's like they get through. Generally they get through winter workouts or most of the way through winter workouts, and then they'll send that out. And
when I ask in January about when it's going to start, I usually get a response like, "It's too early. Don't ask me." That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Freddie Z says number 35 stepped up, I thought, and hit some folks. I feel like when he hits a guy, they stop or go backwards.
Some really good tackles. Good game overall. Very physical. And he is a very quiet guy. You guys probably all saw that on the celebration where he was, what's his face, asking him questions.
Reese Davis.
Hey, Tommy, blah, blah, blah. And Tommy's like, football is good. I am happy. And just these one or two word answers. And then we talked to him afterwards, and he starts out like that. But the more we talked to him, he was really starting to just open up. And when I say open up, he just, having a conversation, because even I'm standing like 2 or 3 feet away from him. Can't always hear his answers initially because, it's just one word. or one sentence, and he's not really trying to open up. But the more you're with him, then he starts to open up, and winning the MVP. I thought it was pretty funny. He's like, well, it's fine, it's cool. But then after he's done, he goes, and then he comes back and he grabs Mike Basford, and he's like, hey, where's my trophy? So he was at least interested in, hey, come on, I was the MVP. Did you not see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just thinking back, like the most interesting conversation I've had with him, and it was probably from the media day of the 2019 Fiesta Bowl, which I was asking him. That was Ohio State's in the playoff. He's a true freshman, and the year before that, his brother Liam Eichenberg was a tackle on the Notre Dame team. Now, I'm going to have to be very specific here. It's the Notre Dame team, Tony, that got killed by a far superior team in the college football postseason. Okay, more specifically, it's the Notre Dame team that got killed by a superior Clemson team in the Peach Bowl, or the Cotton Bowl. It was the Cotton Bowl, and they got killed like 30-3. But so Tommy Eichenberg went from the high school kid brother of this guy on Notre Dame's team, just sitting in the stands of the college football playoff, to okay, now you're on the team in this playoff game, and just had a good conversation with him about that. And you get him going, and it's like, oh yeah, but it just there are plenty of guys on Ohio State's team that either are not super comfortable talking or just don't want to talk, or just they would choose. It's like the old Seinfeld. I choose not to run. Like I choose not to talk, and
So Kate Stover and Tommy Eichenberg are like really good friends and roommates. And I asked Kate, is Tommy is he quiet with his friends or just with the media? And Stover's like, well, actually, sometimes he can be quiet with his friends. You just have to know him, but he's certainly more outgoing among people he knows. But this is also a guy who has been so heavily criticized this year from the fan base. And Kate Stover was asked about that, and he said, Tommy doesn't look at social media and stuff like that, and it wouldn't, that's not something he is looking for. And I don't know if he's a rarity. Good for him, because there are too many players, and it's not their fault. I'm not blaming the victims here. Like, there are too many players who see what fans, not just Buckeye fans, but players at all different schools and teams or whatever, see what is being said about them on social media, and it's not healthy. And Tommy Eichenberg is not one of those guys at this point who looks for it. Remember, Isaiah Prince had to take his phone away after that Penn State game, because it was just sitting there and reading it and seeing what everybody thinks about you, the people on Twitter, what they think about you, who are adding you, and it's unnecessary, and yet it's going to happen. And players, if they can avoid it, that's the smartest course of action for them.
For sure. Actually, for non-college football players too.
No. I mean, you may eventually, not you, but you out there may eventually lose your job for something you say on social media. I'm not so sure that's a bad thing for them, not for me. I'm saying, like, it's kind of it's a little natural selection, is what I'm saying.
A sharp turn from that to Mindy Van Sickle, who says her bold prediction: C.J. Hicks starts at will linebacker.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about that. As we just said, like, Steel Chambers is 1 year in, but he has gained confidence. He has a running head start over C.J. Hicks. Hicks coming in, but guys are all kind of going to be learning a little bit of a new defense, but it's not such a drastic change, I don't think, from what they do now. But for C.J. Hicks, it's all going to be brand new. Was he our pick for the first freshman to actually start again at Ohio State? Because
I think he was your pick, and I might have picked Sonny Styles.
Really?
I might have, because I thought he fit.
I think I went with Kenyatta Jackson, actually.
He went. I might have.
There's no way to tell.
I think Sonny Styles was my pick for the highest drafted.
Yes,
that might have been the one I was thinking of.
But it's also not a overly deep position, so an injury could do something. Now, where is Taraji Mitchell? He's another guy. I don't see him coming back. Like,
probably
there's the number of snaps that he got over the last half of the season. If you come back, you realize that if you want to quit during the middle of a game, that's your own fault. At this point, don't come back if the possibility are is that you're going to be unhappy, because if you're unhappy now and they're just bringing in more talent, like go somewhere and play, because that's what you need. Like that's what Dallas Gant needed. That's what Kayvon Pope needed. Go play somewhere. They thought they were going to play here. They didn't. By this time, Taraji Mitchell should know it's probably not going to happen here.
Yeah. Here's
and I'm not trying to chase them off.
Yeah. But that's again, like, this is very much the type of player who, a guy who's graduated. The guys who've graduated, if they're not starters and they want to keep playing, a lot of times they will leave. That doesn't mean that you're chasing them off. Exactly. Ty Kroner, and maybe we'll end on this one because this is an interesting one. And I don't know that I have a specific name, but are there any other assistants on Oklahoma State that would be legit good hires, assuming more defensive coaches leave Ohio State? And that's an interesting one to me because I think, number one, Ohio State can outpay Oklahoma State. We have seen that because that is one of the reasons that Jim Knowles is coming to Ohio State. I wonder about, Jim Knowles is going to know the people who want to, who are going to come in and be able to know his defense, run his defense. They're going to know the terminology, all of that stuff. That's potentially a very big thing. If you're kind of overhauling everything, you don't need to teach the coaches before the coaches teach the players. Like, the coaches already know it. At the same time, you're not going to bring in everyone, but you might, if let's say there are two more openings on the defensive side of the ball, because Matt Barnes is leaving, so that's Knowles' spot. Let's say there's two more openings at the defensive side of the ball. They may bring in one Oklahoma State assistant, or the position coach who Jim Knowles really likes his secondary done this specific way, and so he's going to bring in the guy who does the secondary this specific way, or he really wants the linebackers done, whatever. I mean, like, whatever it is, you bring in someone who has who can really do this specific thing, because this is a little bit the antithesis of what they did with Kerry Combs, which is they said, here's what we want to run. We want this guy to do it. He's never done it, but I'm sure it's going to go great. If you have the opportunity to, you want to do things a certain way, and you have been, I think we're all assuming he has been sort of handed the reins of the defense and said, this is yours. You make your choices on this. I would not be surprised at all to see a transfer or two from Oklahoma State. I would not be surprised at all to see a coach or two from Oklahoma State.
Well, and when this was all going down, I was looking at the Oklahoma State coaching staff, and these are guys who, in terms of the defensive assistants, have all been there at Oklahoma State for 9 years, a long time, and some of them, at least one of them, is an Oklahoma State graduate, an alum. So it didn't really feel like there'd be any of these up-and-comers that you bring along with you. These are more kind of what Utah has, which are basically lifers as assistants. Like, they are perfectly happy there because they've come up from the Mountain West, and sure, maybe they will eventually move on, but like, they're comfortable where they are. And Jim Knowles is not like this long-time Oklahoma State guy. What was it there? 4 years, 3 years, 4 years. So everybody else there has been there longer, and their roots are deep at Oklahoma State. But we'll see, because who is he comfortable with? Is there the concern I have, though, is the recruiting aspect.
Right.
Yeah. You're going to have to bring in, if you're replacing Kerry Combs and Larry Johnson. I don't know that you can bring in somebody from Oklahoma State. I think you have to bring in established recruiters, because you are losing two of the best. So you need to bring in somebody who can go and replicate that to the best of their ability, not somebody who is accustomed to, you look at his 24/7 commitment chart, and it's just 3-star guys. And that's what you're going to get at Oklahoma State, because that's who they recruit, and that's what they are. But you can't. I think you got to shoot higher than that. And maybe these are the best technicians out there, and maybe they've just never had an opportunity to recruit. And that's very possible. And you find out that, oh wow, this guy's really good, but you kind of don't want to just discover that accidentally.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think we've hit our magic number. More than 3 hours. I think that's that is definitely a new high score.
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. I know we've had some podcasts in the past of like 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Not since about 2018.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. And so this was, we were just going to be sitting in the hotel room all day. And so we thought, why not just do this? And there's still plenty to talk about. The splash of the Rose Bowl is still around. And now we move on to, gosh, like talking about next year, thinking back to this year. We're kind of in that spot of recapping.
Yeah, well,
it's forward.
It's like Rose Bowl, where it was part 2021, part 2022. Coaching changes, transfer portal, NFL decisions, and that's just the next 3 weeks, and then winter workouts will start, and it's just and then all of a sudden it's football season in Columbus again.
Yeah, and for the podcast purposes of this show, this may be, I don't know, like 5 shows. However, if stuff is happening, we'll do bonus shows, so don't worry about that. You're not going to miss anything. We're still going to be talking. It's just we thought we would try to get a couple of days of maybe, because we're going to lose a day to travel. The next day after travel, really, how much do you have to give?
You're kind of shot, yes.
Yeah, so this was a way to get some work done ahead of time, talk to you guys, which is always fun, and a little bit of cake. We get to have it, and then we also get to eat it. So that was nice. Couldn't do that without you guys. Thank you for the chatting. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for being here on a Sunday night. And we will talk to you tomorrow, plausibly. And if something crazy happens, we will talk to you tomorrow, definitely. So thank you all for joining us. Seriously, that's the end of the 2021 season. A great way to end it. I'll just say that. And thank you all, and we will talk to you guys later.